put a shout out and thank you for doing that for the committee. Thank you.
All right. As you can see today, this is our abbreviated version of a last meeting. We typically would be putting together 2 days. So just kind of give the committee and the public general awareness of pithy comments. If you're coming forward, try to keep everything as short and sweet, direct to the point as you can, as we do have a tightened and condensed timeline today. So yes, Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the minutes of the last meeting.
Ooh, give me just 2 seconds here.
You said abbreviated, Mr. Chairman.
We will get there. I just want to make sure a couple other housekeeping items as well. Please direct all comments to the chair. If you have a direct question and or something for individuals, please direct those to the chair. The chairman will work through that, make sure that we are keeping decorum through this entire meeting. So with that, Mr. Representative Larson, would you like to make a motion on the minutes?
I move we adopt those minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Larson, seconded by Geringer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, and then let the record also reflect, Eve, that I do see Representative Banks has joined us via Zoom.
Yep, my apologies. I was having problems hearing, and I'm with you now.
We got you here. Thank you, Representative Banks.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're already ahead of schedule because we're at 8:35. We got 10 minutes here to make up, folks. I'm sure we'll find a way to do that. So our first topic here is going to be with the Military Department for sexual assault reporting and reduction efforts with the Adjutant General. General Porter. Sergeant Major, please introduce yourselves for the record, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Major General Greg Porter, and I serve as the Adjutant General for the state of Wyoming.
Yeah, and good morning. I'm Command Sergeant Major Thad Eady, the Command Senior Enlisted Leader of the Wyoming National Guard.
All right, in general, it looks, we usually do an opening portion here. I'll kind of let you start the process, let you kind of have the process as you see fit.
Hey, sounds good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I did want to provide a quick military update. A lot of stuff going on in the world right now, particularly with the Guard, and kind of wanted to give you a quick heads up on that. This is our agenda. I'll give you a quick update, and then we'll go through sexual assault, sexual harassment report, and then on to our legislative issues that we've got. Next slide, please, on the Defend the Homeland. So not too much more to talk on this. Obviously, those are the 3 priorities of the administration. And I would just say, though, that China, President Xi, once again last week, started purging a bunch of his generals. Again, about 9 general officers were purged, all along the lines of loyalty to the state, and potentially some concern on Xi's part that they may have been working a little too closely with the United States. So another purge occurred there, probably the largest one that's happened in the last couple of decades. So I think it's fairly significant to see where that go and what that means in terms of 2027 and their desire to retake Taiwan. I don't know, but that certainly can't help. And I thought it'd be interesting to let you guys know where that's going. Let's go real quick to the next one, a military update. We are continuing to support ICE. They're actually pretty busy. Right now, we do have 14 members doing that mission in a Title 32, or it's federal pay, but it's under the control of the governor. And they're doing a great job right now. So like I said, a little busier than what I thought they may be doing, but they're definitely not bored. 115th Field Artillery Brigade, they've been deployed over to Jordan and Kuwait for the past really 9 to 10 months. They returned, had a great turnout here in Cheyenne. Appreciate everybody that was able to make it back to attend their welcome home. And they're largely on leave right now, getting ready to return to their civilian life. 153rd Airlift Wing, our Air National Guard brothers and sisters, they're getting prepared to roll out about this time next year, the 1st of October. They'll be the first, what we call a deployable combat wing from the Air National Guard, which means they take 2 formations, one from Ohio, which is an F-16 wing, and then our own wing, which is a C-130 wing, a theater lift, and they push them together and then they deploy. So that'll be the first real attempt to do that under this new construct of which they're trying to get after large-scale combat operations. So they're going through a lot of changes and a lot of discovery learning right now. Air Force is making some changes as well on how they organize themselves, and so they're very busy. I did want to let you know that we still have hiring limitations in place ever since the 3rd of March. We haven't really been able to hire any federal employees. That's left us 66 vacancies. If you take a look at where we think we are, what we know about the National Defense Appropriations Act, we potentially could lose 9 more if the act goes through as the president's budget indicates right now. So not helpful for us. We need everybody that we can get, and reduction in full-time manning doesn't help our readiness. To that end, the government shutdown is affecting us pretty significantly. So we were able to get our technician for our dual status military technicians and our Title V employees paid about 80% of their check a couple of weeks ago. The president used some R&D money out of the Air Force, that was 2-year money, to pay one time our active Guard and Reserve folks this last pay period. So, but unless there's another rabbit out of the hat out there, that money is gone. So probably starting this week, we'll really start to see our employees not receive paychecks. That's about 786 full-time employees for us that won't get those. That's 476 active Guard and Reserve AGRs and about 310 technicians in Title V. So all those folks you see back here are working for free right now. So we'll see where that goes. Don't have a lot of indications that there's an end in sight, but we'll see how that shakes out. I did make the decision to exempt all of our National Guard employees. As I said, I need each and every one of them. So they're all exempted and they're all coming to work right now. So all of the duties that they perform, I deemed as essential. And so at this point, everybody's coming to work, even though they do so without pay. I can tell the committee that we continue to be on mission, on task. The team's doing a great job. We continue to support ICE. We continue to do search and rescues. We continue to do deployment activities. We continue to do all the things that the state of Wyoming and America expects of our uniformed personnel. So they're tracking and on time. Any questions along those lines yet?
Committee?
Question?
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, so that wing that you're deploying with in Ohio, is that a guard wing or an active duty wing?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, it is a guard wing. It's Ohio's guard. Yep.
Okay. Seeing nothing further.
All right. Next slide talks about Army Transformation Initiative. I'm just going to, given time, just do a real quick summary of this. The Army doesn't believe that it has the weapon systems to compete in this next fight of large-scale combat operations. So they are really trading a lot of readiness for modernization, to be able to build new weapon systems. So this Army Transformation Initiative will eventually turn all of the infantry brigades and striker brigades, as we know them right now, into what's known as a mobile brigade. So that's less than what an armored brigade or an infantry brigade, less personnel, and they'll actually be housed in, it looks kind of like a big dune buggy. It's a Chevy Colorado chassis. It carries, called an infantry squad vehicle. It carries about 9 infantrymen with their gear, but it's a lot lighter and easily more mobile than our heavy brigades are. So you'll see, except for 3 armored brigades in the Guard, the other 25 infantry brigades will convert to these mobile brigades over the next 5 to 10 years. So a lot of stuff that goes with that, and the Army is moving incredibly fast for the Army. So there's a lot of glass getting broken on turning in old equipment, getting trained for the new equipment, and really reorienting itself to face a new threat on large-scale combat operations. So this Army Transformation Initiative, a lot to it. You may have heard that, what Training and Doctrine Command and Forces Command all coming together under different, they're reorganizing, losing general officers, a lot of things involved in Army transformation. The thing that, though, it probably affects Wyoming the most right now today is on this next slide. which is the Army made the decision for all of its medical evacuation companies, our helicopter UH-60 companies, to go from 15 tails to 12 tails. They did that based on the fact they don't think they're going to be doing much medevac in the next fight, particularly in the Pacific, Indo-Pacific area. So they want to take some savings from that, from their helicopters that they'll save, and reinvest it into new helicopters and new capability, and also to save a little money. So what that meant for Wyoming is we're scheduled right now to lose 3 of our 6, half of our medevac capability in 1 September of 26. I non-concurred with the director's decision. It was the Department of the Army, it was the director of the Army National Guard that made the decision of which units got to lose the tails. It was the Army's decision to reduce them all. But we non-concurred. The governor's tracking, both Senator Barrasso, Senator Lumbus are tracking, and so is Representative Hageman. So we're continuing to work through that right now on what potential force structure we could get to backfill it. Could we trade with another state to get UH-60s? And so we're working through that right now. But it is significant that that is the only capability in the state that really can get after search and rescue over 9,000 feet. And we need to be able to have that capability. We're going to be flying Blackhawks for another 50 years, at least in the Guard. So we gotta get after that. So that's the thing. That's probably the big thing that's touching us right now. Sounds like there was a question.
Mr. Co-Chairman?
Yeah, just, can you put it in context? How many are we losing guard-wide? And is the active duty taking the similar cut?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I couldn't tell you guard-wide. It is the entire Army. They made the decision. Active component's losing it too. Actually, the reserve component is losing all their aviation. They're all coming either into the Guard or it's disappearing. So the reserves, Army Reserve is losing basically everything on that side. So I'll get you the number of how many helicopters totally that means, but I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General, for being here and giving this report. Give me an idea over the last, pick a time frame, year, 5 years, 10 years. How many high altitude search and rescue missions have you performed?
Yeah.
General?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, Representative Geringer, I meant to get those numbers for you, but I would say during this last, probably year, probably about 20. Yeah.
Okay. Committee, anything further? All right, General?
All right, sir. Without any other questions on really the military updates, I'd like to move into the sexual assault, sexual harassment report.
Perfect.
All right. Very quickly, if we could go slide 8. Next slide, quick overview. For those of you that may not recall, this report goes to the governor every year, and also it's been tradition that we provide this to to yourself in this particular meeting as the committee. It's required by law that we do this, and I would point out that we ask for that as the military department, for that to be included. We think it's important for us to be accountable in these areas, and I look forward to sharing the work that we're doing in preventing sexual assault, sexual harassment, discrimination within the military department. I'm going to give you a quick executive summary. We'll go through the unrestricted sexual assault cases, look and see what we're doing in FY26 to continue to get after it, and then any questions that the team has. I did want to start off, though, if I could. There's an entity in our organization called the prevention workforce, and I've got a bunch of them back here. So if I wonder if you guys could just stand up real quick, I want to introduce you to our prevention workforce. These guys are the one that helps us get after all those corrosives, suicide, sexual assault, harassment, domestic violence, anything that's corrosive. This team right back here helps us get after that, and they do a great job, and it's really been beneficial for us. We've only been able to have them around for about four years. We recently got the funding to stand them up, and they've been great helping us out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So I'll tell you, as an overview, I believe that the Wyoming Military Department has a culture that does not tolerate sexual assault, sexual harassment. We just don't do it. We treat one another with dignity and respect. I think that's how we all would like to be treated, and that's what makes us a lethal fighting team is that trust and that ability for us to trust one another in the most dire of circumstances. This last year, we've decreased sexual assault by about 33% from 9 in 24 to 6 in FY25. Of that 6, 2 were restricted, and I'll just remind the committee, restricted means that really not much information is. They receive services as victims, but law enforcement is involved. There's no investigation. It's all restricted, and so the only thing that happens is they get services for there's nothing else reached out. On the unrestricted reports, though, that's where that we have more information. That's where law enforcement gets involved. The chain of command knows about it and is really able to dig in and get after this. I will once again just remind the committee that by law, the National Guard is prohibited from investigating sexual assaults. We cannot do it. It has to be local law enforcement. If local law enforcement is not enough, then there's another component in the National Guard called the Office of Complex Investigation, OCI. And we have to forward those up to them for them to take a look at it. And then they'll give us they'll give us an administrative decision about whether it was sexual assault or what it was. But we are prohibited from investigating sexual assaults by law. Let me go to the next slide. Sexual harassment, relatively new for the military. It just became a crime not too long ago. This last year, we increased our reports from 2 in 24 to 4 in FY25. However, there were no formal sexual harassment reports. This was all at the informal level. So what that means was we had a complainant come forward and say, "Hey, listen, I don't think that I'm being treated correctly. I think I'm being harassed sexually." And the military chain of command then takes that report, does the investigation, and then gets the in this case of our 4 administrative discipline. So that happened all 4 times. None of the complainants chose to make it formal. They were all satisfied that it was informal. And as I talked to my team here, I would characterize most of that as, stupid comments, immaturity, that sort of thing. We had no quid pro quo types of sexual harassment that you might think, and it was pretty low level in that. But I tell you, we take that seriously, because if you let that go, then that leads into potentially greater things in terms of sexual assaults. So we take the sexual harassment discussion seriously, and we nip it in the bud as soon as we can.
General,
yes,
just
sir.
a quick question for you on that. So sexual assaults, you guys are prohibited from taking care of. Sexual harassment, I'm guessing you guys take care of in-house, is that correct?
Yes, sir, particularly at the informal level. We do have, as I'll talk here, we trained about 10 investigators in our formations to go out and actually do the investigations, so they understand how to do it correctly. So, but sexual harassment, we can.
Okay, thank you.
We didn't wind up referring any to outside agencies for sexual harassment. Like I said, the 4 that they had were satisfied that the military chain of command handled it. Anything else on sexual harassment? All right. Let me move to slide 11, which really talks about our climate assessments. And this is one of the ways that we try to judge what's going on in the organization. We have what we call the DEOCS, the Department of Defense Equal Opportunity Survey, that everybody takes in each service. There's the Adjutant General hotline that's out there that people can call and leave an issue. There's internal surveys, and also we have IG, our Inspector General, which is a Title 10. He's actually sitting behind me, Lieutenant Colonel Barrios. He is a Title 10, which means doesn't work for me per se. He's an independent operator and assists the Adjutant General in Inspector General cases. And they do sensing sessions with our units throughout the day. As I look at through all that, my own circulation of the force, I just don't sense any issues along those lines. I don't get much of a vibe that there's a concern about that. Matter of fact, when we do look at it, we see some real high levels of leadership support and connectedness within the ranks, which I think gets back to the culture that we're trying to create, that cowboy culture that's accountable and trustworthy. And so those are strong things for us to make sure that we maintain. By far and away, the biggest thing that comes across is stress and all its forms. Right now, it's stress about paychecks. stress about being mobilized. We had about a third of the Army mobilized last year. We got the airlift wing is about to mobilize, and it's high adventure trying to figure out all the things they've got to do. So stress is by far and away what I mostly hear about in the force is the risk factors. We didn't, I always like to have external set of eyes come in and look at our programs. We didn't have one this last year, not because we didn't schedule it, but we were in a continuing resolution most of the year. So a lot of external looks at us were prohibited, and then executive orders came out and actually prevented it even further. So I didn't have any external looks at the program this year. We'll try to get back in that next year, because it's important for outside eyes to take a look at us and give us ways we can improve that maybe we don't see ourselves.
General, just to make sure I understand you correctly on that, when you say no external agencies, you're talking state agencies to have come back and look?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir, state agencies and also National Guard and Army and Air.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take external looks from anybody.
Okay, thank you.
We did have one congressional complaint filed. They were concerned that there may have been some retaliation involved with them. We referred that to an out-of-state investigator, and they ultimately unsubstantiated that complaint. So of that one. Any questions on that?
Seeing none.
All right, the next slide 12 really gets after what we're seeing. Alcohol was present in one form or another in every one of our 4 cases this year. One subject, which I would characterize as a predator, was responsible for 2. So that individual is currently incarcerated up in Wheatland, and as I said, I would characterize that individual as a predator. Just to give you a little bit more on that particular one, we had 2 of our folks out of the unit there come forward and report sexual assault from this individual. Ultimately, local law enforcement didn't substantiate their reports, but in the process of their investigation, it opened up a whole door, and they discovered a lot more victims out there. So last we checked, I think this individual was charged with 98 counts of connected sexual assault, sexual crimes on that particular individual. So a predator that we don't like to see in our ranks, and no longer is in our ranks. But I'm very proud of the 2 individuals that came forward that ultimately led to getting this person off the street.
General, out of those 98 counts, were there any further within your ranks that came forward, or were those outside of the Guard?
Mr. Chairman, I believe those were all outside. The only 2 that I'm tracking, let me look. I don't think there was anybody else in our ranks. One more.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
We had another case where individual got intoxicated and was at the hotel where they were staying, and ultimately it was reduced to unlawful contact without bodily injury. And then our last case was actually 2 dependents. Their primaries were deployed at the time, and I was actually very pleased that the dependent came forward and wanted to use our services, and actually reached out to us and said so. So those were our 4 restricted. One was the predator. We had one that ultimately became unlawful bodily contact, and then 2 dependents that were involved in one that came forward and are using our services right now. So that's the summation of the unrestricted reports. Makes sense? I need to.
Seeing no questions?
All right. Hey, if I think we move to the next one, just a couple of things that we want to sustain. One of the things that initially came out when we asked for an external investigation or an assessment early back in 2020 was there was confusion in our force about where do you go report? How do you get this started? So the team really spent a lot of time working on that, and I think we've got that figured. There is no wrong door now in the military department. You can go to any of our team back here, and we will get you to the right space. And so I think that's one of the biggest sustains that we've had, and really went after the largest thing that the external assessment told us was eliminate the confusion. Just make it simple, and that's what we've done, and the team's doing a great job. We're really well trained. No other organization in the state does the training that we do on sexual assault, sexual harassment, and just treating one another with dignity and respect. we do a very good job of that. And more importantly, it's not just textbook. We take, although we have limited data, limited instances, what we do have, we take that and we reshape the training. Alcohol right now is a big focus for us, not only for sexual assault, sexual harassment, but DUIs and just force protection in general. So we're spending a lot of time thinking through that and how do you affect a force that oftentimes you can only see 2 days a month. So we're very cognizant of getting after the threats as we see them. We do have a perpetrator, though, in the Wyoming National Guard. We hold them accountable. And whether that's corrective action or whether we need to remove them from the ranks, there's not a leader out there that's reticent to do so. And it's important for us that we continue. Really do want to have an outside set of eyes come and look at our program. There's blind spots that we all have that we all think about, and outside set of eyes will help us see those. So we'll continue to be aggressive about reaching out and having other folks take a look at us. And we do a lot of information with our leadership. The brigadier generals, my two one-star commanders, meet monthly with their support care teams and go through it. And then I meet with the care teams and the two commanders quarterly to go over all this. So a lot of discussion, a lot of good, robust debate on how we get after these problems. So I'm pretty happy with those sustains. I think there's a place that we can improve, though. Our workforce team, our IPPW here, the Integrated Primary Prevention Workforce, really does a good job. They've got a plan that is part of the report that you'll see, but we really want to leverage their ability to do analysis a little bit more. Their ability to take the data, the small amount of data we do have, define trends for us, define where we can get better. So I think that's one of the things we'll focus on. We do have reports of sexual harassment. I take it as a good thing that they're reporting, but they're reporting for a reason. There's still things going on out there that we can't tolerate, and we have to correct immediately. So we're going to continue to focus on the sexual harassment piece of that and make sure that we get that out of the ranks. One of the things that I'll tell you, if we go to the next slide, is the team really takes it seriously. What this slide is showing you here is when the 115th Field Artillery Brigade was deployed in Jordan and Kuwait, they actually ran through an exercise about what do you do when you respond, when somebody comes to you. And they did an outstanding recreation of a sexual assault. And the team went through the entire the process from the reporting all the way through to victim services in a deployed area. One of the things that we were pointed out when we had the discussion with the governor early on is we can't rely on outside agencies to police us because they're not there on those small islands out there in the Pacific. They're not there when we're deployed. This has to be part of our culture. This has to be part of what we understand as the standard for us. And I'm pretty happy to say that the team does this. This exercise was so successful it actually got pushed out across the Army as a best practice, and the team did a great job to train and get better at it. So the team does a great job. Any questions on that one? All right.
Yes, Representative Larson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General Porter, in this annual report, there's also a requirement, in addition to sexual harassment and assault, on discrimination. And I just hadn't heard you talk about if there are any discrimination or discriminatory issues that you had to deal with, but I didn't see that in the report and was just following up on that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I think that's right. I'm not tracking much in the area of discrimination, but I think I owe you some more. I wasn't focused on that, to tell you the truth, sir, but I think I owe you some more data on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Larson. General?
Sir, on slide 16, really, this is my objectives and vision. Really, our focus, to summarize, our focus is on prevention. I mean, we got to be after preventing it from happening. And that that comes with a strong command climate, with a strong no tolerance for this kind of behavior, and making sure that if it does happen, that we hold folks accountable. And so that's where our heads are at. That's where we continue to get after, and what our standard wants to be. Really quickly, let me sum up on the command action for 26. Let me just talk about two particular ones. If we go to slide 17, these are the things that we're going to do for the upcoming year. Add rapid formative assessments prior to annual training. What that means is that before we go into annual training, which is generally the longest amount of time, usually a minimum of 2 weeks with one another, we have the leadership go and sort of do the Q&A. And instead of, they'll ask the questions that gets to the heart of it. Have you really learned about this training, or are you just parroting what a slide says? And so each leadership team then has the ability to go and talk to their subordinate leaders and ask those questions, get those assessments to make sure that the training actually happened and it's not just glossed over. So we'll put some more emphasis on that this year. And then I also think there's some underserved populations throughout the state. And I wanted to be clear about this. Like I said, our IPPW deals with sexual assault, sexual harassment, but also suicide is another big one for them, and domestic violence to similar issues, or to a similar state. What we find out as we go across the state, many of our communities don't have enough resources to get after that. And so we'd like to be able to try to identify those, build some better connectivities with those communities, and make sure that our soldiers and airmen and employees that are out in those communities know where to go and can get there. And any place that we have an ability to enhance that capacity and capability, we'll do that.
Representative Larson.
So General Porter, that's really interesting and comment that you made there. And so as we've engaged as a state to do behavioral health redesign and put a lot of this responsibility on the community mental health centers, my question is, are you reaching out and coordinating your needs to the community mental health centers, or how are you reaching out locally to identify those resources available and then to connect our servicemen to those resources?
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, great points there, and that's what we're in the process right now. It's actually this team going out to those communities and talking to the shelters, talking to the mental health folks, making those connectivities right now. We got a long way to go on that one, but that's what our job is.
Follow up, please.
So would it be worth the time maybe then to maybe reach out within the Department of Health to understand what that structure and resources are? Might save you some road time, and you could focus on and understand what the intent is. It's just a thought, Mr. Chairman.
I think Director Johansson certainly has a roadmap out there for all of that, and you don't have to recreate the wheel, General.
Yeah, thanks, Representative, or Mr. Chairman, Representative Miller, thank you. That's great. Yes, sir.
Okay. Seeing nothing further, continue, please.
Sir, I think we're there. I'm ready to have the discussion. Any guidance from the committee, anything that you see that we can do better, any thoughts on your side, we'd be happy to entertain.
General, I'll just say from the chairman's perspective, thank you for getting this to us in a timely fashion. Appreciate that. I will say that it is improvement, but I think I speak for the rest of the committee that one is too many, and I think you feel the same way. But Senator, I almost gave you a promotion to representative over there,
Oh, well,
Senator
thank you.
Anderson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a question back on one of those slides. You mentioned that alcohol was involved with some of those instances. It's been our experience that alcohol and drugs are involved. Are you seeing that, or was that really just alcohol?
General, please.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, it's primarily alcohol. We still test for drugs in the force. And so even though it's legal in some of our neighboring states like marijuana and some of those kind of things, it's not in the Wyoming Guard and in the Guard in general. So we don't see a lot of that. Like I said, for this it was alcohol that really influenced the situation.
So a follow-up to that I have, what type of work are you guys doing? So we certainly talk about sexual assault, we talk about sexual harassment. What are you guys talking about substance abuse? And how that, since that seems to be a very, well, we won't even call it common, it's the factor is what it seems like. What are you guys doing for that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we generally couch that into terms of force protection on trying to keep one another safe. You know, the substance abuse part, it's really primarily alcohol for us for this thing. We test for the other things. Alcohol is the one it's such a particularly in our state, it's such a medication in a lot of cases for a lot of folks. And since we do often only see our folks, a couple of days a month, it's a struggle for us to get after it. It's continued training. It's continued awareness of nothing good happens, after midnight with alcohol. It just doesn't. And so it continues to be a training focus for us, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing nothing further, committee, speak now, forever hold your peace. Seeing none, thank you, General. All right. With that, we will, all right, wait, General, we have one more. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your welcome to the committee. General, Sergeant Major, so I attended the Yellow Ribbon that you conducted in Gillette. I guess it's been a month ago plus now, and I thank you for that. I think it was good for the troops all get back together post-deployment, and that there was a lot of services being offered. So one of the things that I guess struck me as I walked around the room and talked to lots of different folks, both guard people and the folks providing services, which some of them were here in the room, there are a lot of options, and sometimes I wonder if they're getting, there's just a lot of options out there, and I just wonder if there's enough communication and cross-pollination within all the offerings that are there, so that we do get them to the services that they actually need. And it's not a criticism. I'm glad there's people out there offering their services of vet to vet, all of those things, powerful things. But I just concerned me, or it just struck me that if I were the person who was returning or needed that service, which service makes sense? How do you actually triage the needs in some meaningful way? So it's not a criticism.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
damn glad there's all those services out there. Just strikes me that there is a lot. It's a menu, and how do people actually work through that menu?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a general comment, any thoughts you might have? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General, please.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Barlow, thank you for that, and you're absolutely right. There is a lot of services out there, and what we're trying to do is the same way we did with sexual assault. There's no wrong door. Get you to one, and then we will link you. We will get you to the right place to get to the rest of them. Because as you said, there's different employment statuses, there's different contracts, there's different levels of support. And frankly, a lot of our folks, when they're getting back, their level of attention isn't as great, at that time until it happens to them. So what we found the best one is let all of our service providers know who's who in the zoo, and then whoever comes to you, we will get you to the right place at the IPPW, and that's how we're going to approach it.
All right. Looks good. General, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Come on forward, please, if you're here for public comment on the topic of sexual assault reporting and reduction efforts. Please come forward, fill the chairs as quickly as possible so we don't have to play musical chairs at the end of each time. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. There's a lot of new faces since last time I was here. My name is Marilyn Burden, and I'm a retired major from the Air Force Reserve component. I spent a little over 17 years in the Wyoming Guard, and it got to be so toxic, I finished up my career in the Air Force Reserve. So I've been coming to this committee for the past 4.5 years. My intent, sorry, I've had 8 eye surgeries and can only see with one eyeball. My intent has been to ensure laws are in place to provide oversight and accountability in the Wyoming Military Department for decades to come. The laws that were passed in 2022 are not having the impact my colleagues and I were hoping for. And for those of you who are new, what I learned in filing my own Inspector General complaint after leaving the Guard in 2018 is that all military complaint avenues lead back to the governor and the Adjutant General. So Washington, not helpful. And so one of those, so there's no avenue of redress outside of the chain of command, and it took my colleagues and I 10 years to find the right battleground, which is all of you. The reports provided by the Adjutant General and what I hear from the troops are not in alignment. Troops going to workforce services are not experiencing the intent outlined in House Bill 53 from 2022. The intent was to provide an avenue of redress outside of the chain of command to reach the governor without going through the Adjutant General. Earlier last year, I referred an officer to Workforce Services for assistance. The member was basically met with the attitude of, why are Guard members bothering me? I have real work to do. That position was funded by this committee and the rest of the legislature with the intent, primary intent to assist Guard members. Representative Stivar and I reported this to Workforce Service leadership, and they were surprised and disappointed. As you know, we're having this meeting, and because of Senate File 45. So we do sexual harassment, discrimination, and sexual assault. And the governor and this committee need oversight on more things going on in the military department than sexual harassment, discrimination, and sexual assault. Since 2023, I've recommended this law be revised to include all congressional complaints and Inspector General complaints, not those not limiting those to sexual misconduct, many other negative decisions and behaviors impacting recruiting and retention. In light of another funding request to assist with meeting end strength goals, updates are needed to the 2022 law for oversight and accountability. Other possible bad behaviors are outlined in Air Force Inspector General Instruction 9301. This includes the possibility that things that fraud, waste, abuse, gross mismanagement, violation of law, policy, procedures, regulations, injustice, abuse of authority, inappropriate conduct, or misconduct, and I'm sure that's not all. And they ask you for money, so you probably should have oversight of if anybody's complaining about that. In the past 2 years, the Adjutant General has reported to you that the Army investigates the air and the vice versa. There is a huge disconnect between what the General says and what actually happens. I am aware of 4 Air Guard complaints were investigated by 1 Air Guard officer. And basic summary is, we've investigated ourselves and found ourselves to be above reproach, also known as cover-up. A root cause analysis needs to be conducted to find out what really happened. Did the Adjutant General not communicate his intent to lower level commanders? Were lower level commanders insubordinate? If so, why are they still in command? Or did the Adjutant General secretly order the code red, if you've not seen A Few Good Men, that's where the quote comes from, to intentionally cover up the misconduct? The squadron with these 4 complaints is the same unit that a 2018 complainant was bullied and harassed to the point where she withdrew her complaint and was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement under duress. She was not given a copy. At one representative meeting, Mr. Smith told Representative Stiver, troops are not forced to sign non-disclosure agreements under duress, yet we have witnesses who say otherwise. The alleged perpetrators of bad behavior in 2018 are also listed in the 2024 complainants. Had the commander appropriately addressed the 2018 misconducts, then maybe we wouldn't have had issues 6 years later. For your situational awareness, these bad actors are still employed full-time with no visible disciplinary consequences. Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, these leadership failures are contributing to the troops leaving the military after a first enlistment. These failures contribute to the Guard constantly asking for taxpayer money to recruit new people. And in my opinion, the silver lining in Wyoming is that in 15 months, we will have a new governor, and in 18 months or less, we will have a new Adjutant General. Thank you for your time. Do you have any comments or questions?
Committee, any questions for Ms. Burden? Seeing none, Ms. Burden, I've got a couple of questions here for you. So I want to make sure that I understand. your definition of investigated, and then I'm going to ask the general to come back up. On the back page here, you said in the past 2 years, the adjutant general has reported to you that the Army investigates the air and the air investigates the Army, vice versa. That's in direct conflict of what we just heard.
Okay, these were.
Before I go there, please give me just a second here. What I would like to understand is the term investigated from your perspective, because what I'm understanding is I think that there's a slight variation of what they consider an investigation versus a complaint and what you are saying is investigated. So can you please help me what your determination is for investigated?
Okay, the term investigation, it depends upon the type of complaint and allegation. There was another complaint in that same organization that was sexual assault, and that was investigated by an outside agency because it's a crime. So they did the right thing on that one. These other ones were allegations in equal opportunity, abuse of power, and I'm not sure because I only talked to one of the 4 complainants, but they're investigating and looking into and inquiring into behavior. So it's sexual assaults are investigated by law enforcement, and these other types of misbehavior are investigated by members of the military.
Okay, so
Which is fine, because I did that as a member of Equal Opportunity and Inspector General.
I just want to be clear as we're here, and specifically on the topic of sexual assault and reporting and re-education efforts, the letter that you have provided the committee with makes it feel as if you are talking about those being sexual assaults. So you are telling me, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on the record here, that the comments that you make here, that they reported to you that we investigate and that we investigated and found ourselves to be covered and above reproach, also known as a cover-up, those were not on sexual assaults. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
There was at least one case of sexual harassment and gender discrimination.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. And then the last question that I have for you is, the alleged perpetrators of the bad behavior in 2018 are also listed in the 2024 complaints. That information, I think, would be helpful for us to get. So I think you and I will probably speak off afterwards on that. One of the things that I think it's critical for is to understand, sometimes we don't know what happens behind the scenes after something is addressed. In 2018, there could have been something done. I don't know. I certainly was on the committee back then, but I don't know what those look like. I will ask the general and the sergeant major to come back up and give us just a little bit of a brief description on that. So I appreciate you providing us with a little bit of the understanding of some of this may be ingrained into previous complaints. My question directly to you is, it seems to me that people are coming to you to have these discussions. What authority have you been given by these people to talk on their behalf?
I asked them if I can have a conversation, if they want me to go to the legislative committee, because they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe. Some are still in the military, they're afraid of retaliation.
Okay,
And I've secured my retirement check, and I've been a civilian almost 4 years.
perfect, thank you.
And the complaint from 2018, the only reason I have a copy is because the member in 2018 asked me to edit it. And because I left in 2018, I do not have access to information from 2024. So I can give you 2018, but you'll have to get the rest of it from the Guard.
Okay, all right. Yes, Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Morning,
I
sir.
get, and I had just a general question on during your, the information you gave us. You said the impact on my colleagues, and I just wondered, how many folks are we talking about? I mean, I get it, you want some anonymity for some people, but I see that, and like it's kind of dovetail into the last question is, how many people are we talking about here? Could you help me out with the numbers?
So,
Ms. Burton.
oh, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Senator Kolb, with the laws in 2022, Rachel Bennett, a former member, retired member of the Air National Guard, and Jenny Rigg, a former director of psychological health for the Air National Guard, and I were the ones who spoke to the committee and worked with our legislative members to get these laws passed.
Follow-up?
Yeah, just, let me try to do this again, because I obviously failed in my question. I'm asking how many people are behind you with this, with where you're representing them, right? How many folks? Are they like 5 people, 10 people, 50 people? That, I mean, you're representing a group that's like an amorphous number. And I was just trying to pin that down to find out just how big the group is. That was my question.
Mr. Chairman, in the past 6 going on 7 years, I've probably had 6 to 8 people who have tried to find me and found me through social media because of news articles, because they've tried to use the system within the Guard, and the system with all the avenues of redress within the Guard failed them.
Follow-up?
One more follow-up. So do you think it's, just your opinion now, I've seen you for years, and you're very diligent in your position. Do you think, honestly, has things gotten better, the worse, or are they the same from your perspective with your position that you still have? What's your opinion? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Burden?
Mr. Chairman, I honestly don't know, because the longer I'm gone, the fewer the people that know who I am or that I exist or any of those things. And what concerns me the most is when I have somebody come to me who has been a victim and their leadership targets them to make the problem go away of sexual assault. If you get rid of the victim, then things are better. We are never, as a culture and society, going to get rid of sexual assault. We're not. 1 in 4 children, 1 in 4 girls by the age of 18 is a victim. 1 in 6 males by the age of 18 is a victim. 1 in 3 women in the military is a victim. 1 in 33 men in the military are victims of sexual assault. I am not asking the general to get the number to 0. I am asking the general and his staff, when somebody comes forward, to go after those perpetrators with a vengeance. Women and children need very, very strong men and good men to protect them and defend them. And men who don't step up and do that are not good men.
Committee, anything further for Ms. Burden? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Burden, for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Any further public testimony? Mr. Crenny, come on down. If there's any other public testimony, I ask that you please fill the chairs so we don't have to play musical chairs when everybody's done.
I apologize,
Crenny.
Mr. Chairman. I thought the general was coming back up. Joey Carenti, I'm a retired member of the Wyoming National Guard. The process that the military goes through, especially the Guard, because it's not the active duty side, maybe deserves a little bit of focus when it comes to things like investigations. The investigation, what is an investigation, what can be investigated, has to do with locality and the type of crime that's being accused. So in this case, sexual assault, they would tend to go to the civilian investigators. But if you ever have a question about what an investigation is and what it encompasses within the Army, I don't know about the classified nature of the document, but there always is an appointment of an investigating officer that says who is to look into what, with what scope, what limitations, what timeline, and the expectation of that report to be returned, not the content of the report. But everything in there and in those processes has to do with, there's civilian law, there's the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there's Army doctrine, there's Army regulation. A lot of the time, because of the way the military functions, we have to allow the civilian courts to do their thing. The Guard would have to allow the civilian courts to do their thing. And then based on the outcome of that, you can also face additional reprimand or admonishment, whatever it is, on the Army side without violating double jeopardy, because there are additional regulations and expectations. So I think that there's a possibility that maybe a more complete understanding of how these separate entities work together or work sometimes not together to address an issue, and that might help limit the public's expectation that we know this guy is a bad guy. We know he did a bad thing. We need the National Guard full of good men to try him and hang him in the public square, create a prison for the Wyoming National Guard so they can handle it all themselves. There's a lot of overlap there, and I don't think that the concerns and the complaints on one side of the issue should be dismissed. I think we're facing a lot of procedural understanding concerns here, and I don't know how much the military department can be forthcoming with the details of any specific engagement in that process, but the process itself should be pretty well laid out. Additionally, there was a bill that the committee has forwarded and hopefully gets introduced in the general session. I do believe that the recruitment and retention bonus program, especially if there's an amendment or a work on internal policy with the military department, says service member must be and must remain in good standing with the military department, no flags, serious flags. You can be flagged for administrative purposes for investigation, but that might be another tool that won't work right away. But the first or second guy that's losing $3,000 to $5,000 of their pending bonus because they did even some bonehead thing related to alcohol will tell the rest of the troops, hey, if you're here and you're going to stay here and you're going to get, a boost to come back and do another contract, then really you're going to be a Wyoming National Guard member 24/7 and you're going to be held to account. So I know that probably doesn't answer a lot of questions, but I think there's more that can be done on the education side. And again, that bonus program, I think, will be a small tooth in a cog that's going to help move this forward. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Any questions for Mr. Kearney? Seeing none, thank you very much. Any further public testimony? Seeing none, we will close public testimony on this. Committee, is there any directives? Seeing none, we'll just enter the report into the record and we'll call this one good. That takes us into our 9:15. We're a little bit behind schedule. I told you we would make that up, ladies and gentlemen. That puts us to our 9:15, which is our military suicide prevention and the bill draft 26 LSO 33, the firearm hold agreement limited liability. Ms. Hanson. And actually, before I go on to you, I just want to let the record reflect that we do have Representative Nicholas with us, and I do believe that the Senator Cooper is online, just having troubles with video, so I just want the record to reflect that as well. So Representative Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I apologize for being late. I had an 8 o'clock meeting this morning and I had a 9 o'clock meeting, but I've been tuning in with both ears since you started. Just
Appreciate you being here. Thank you, Representative Nicholas. All right. Ms. Hanson, back to you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting Bill Draft 26 LSO 33, version 0.5, Firearm Hold Agreement Limited Liability. This bill draft was requested at the committee's May meeting. This bill draft was drafted based on Montana's Firearm Hold Agreement statute. The Montana statute is provided in your meeting materials under item 3-02 on page 11. I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 starts on page 1, line 9, by creating Wyoming Statute 13120, Firearm Hold Agreements. Subsection A on page 2, lines 2 through 4, states that no cause of action shall arise against a person for returning a firearm to a firearm owner at the termination of a firearm hold agreement. Subsection B on page 2, lines 6 through 12, provides that the immunity provided in subsection A shall not apply to any action arising against a person for returning a firearm to a firearm owner at the termination of a firearm hold agreement if the action was the result of a breach of contract or otherwise unlawful conduct on the part of the person holding a firearm for another person. Subsection C on page 2, lines 14 through 20, defines a firearm hold agreement to mean a written or oral agreement between a firearm owner and another person in which the other person takes physical possession of the firearm owner's lawfully possessed firearm at the owner's request, holds the firearm for an agreed period of time, and returns the firearm to the owner according to the terms of the agreement. Subsection D on page 2, lines 22 and 23, and page 3, lines 1 and 2, provides that this section shall not apply to items under the National Firearms Act, including firearms, machine guns, rifles, shotguns, and any other weapon. Section 2 on page 3, lines 4 and 5 provides that this act shall apply to all firearm hold agreements entered into on or after July 1st, 2026. And Section 3 on page 3, line 7 provides an effective date of July 1st, 2026. And I'll stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions? Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talise, if we could go to page 2 on section C, and if you could walk me through the intent of this bill. Where I'm struggling a little bit is a written agreement and oral agreement. So correct me where I'm wrong, but in a scenario, if I had an agreement with Representative Wiley to hold my firearm because I felt the need, there's a mental health crisis or something to that effect, and so he's holding my firearm for me, the surest documentation of that would be a written agreement where I say I give him permission to hold this for 30 days and I don't want it back before then, and so on and so forth. At the end of that 30 days, he gives me that firearm back, and then if there's an incident where I cause harm and maybe a family member then says, Representative Wiley, why did you give him that back? We have this written documentation. Am I tracking kind of how this is intended?
Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, yes, I believe that is correct. On
So-
the written or oral part, Montana statute includes oral agreement, but some of the other states only require a written agreement.
So follow up. I
Follow-up,
just wanted
please.
to make sure, Mr. Chairman, that I've got it in my head right. So then the same scenario, I ask Representative Wiley to hold my firearm. I'm over in his garage and I hand him this pistol and he says, yeah, and I'm just struggling right now and can you hold this for me for 3 weeks so I don't do something stupid? He says, you bet, love you, take care of it. 3 weeks, I come back and I says, can I have that firearm? He says, yeah, 3 weeks. Gives it to me. Whatever the harm's done is done. And my wife comes and says, Representative Wiley, why did you give him that gun back? She says, well, we had an agreement. I know of no agreement, Representative Wiley. Where's this agreement? You should have never I'm holding you liable for that. I don't know how you prove, we're going to give immunity to a person when there really is no documentation that agreement existed. And doesn't that become difficult to prove?
Ms. Hanson, that's a pretty tough question for you, but I'll allow it.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, if that case were to go to court, Representative Wiley would have to get on the stand and say that this is an agreement that we had, and it would be left to the court. Verbal contracts in other contexts are something that is enforceable. If I agree to sell you something for $20 and then you agree to pay me $20 for that item, and then you decide that you don't want to pay me $20 anymore, we can go to court and settle that, and that is a oral contract.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we got them lined up here. We're going to start with Senator Kolb, then we'll go Representative McCann, and then to the co-chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This goes to the LSO. And I guess while reading this, page 2, say, I'll just, at the end of it, line 9, and the determination of said firearm agreement. Now, what constitutes determination? Is that a fixed, can the person who entered in the agreement, who had the firearm, who gave to another person, are they bound by that agreement that they had made with that other person? Say it's like, I don't know, say it's a month, hold the firearm for a month. And then the person who owned the firearm during that course of that month decides, no, I want my firearm back. Now, are they then, then there's no protection against that person who gave the firearm back? That's my question at hand, if I explain that well enough. Basically, can you terminate the agreement? If you do terminate the agreement, is there no liability protection according to this bill? Or is it you're looking at it differently than that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Senator. And then I would add on top of that, what constitutes termination, I think is a very similar follow-up on that, because is it the person just says, hey, I want to terminate this contract, and then said liability is waived at that point?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, most contracts, I mean, it would depend on your oral agreement. If we're talking about that, it's probably separate, but a written agreement usually would have a provision about termination in that agreement.
That's good enough.
Well, just follow
Okay,
up.
Senator, follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, do you think these people are sophisticated enough to come up with that in their written, we'll just talk about a written agreement to make it simpler. But are they going to be, that sophisticated? I guess my concern is this, is that how do you then defend your denial of your Second Amendment rights? You want your firearm back, and the said other person is afraid now that they're going to face liability. They don't give it back. What type of conflict are we going to get into there with trying to stop, to help suicide prevention? I realize that's a good goal we have. The devil's in the details here, and I'm concerned about that conflict. And I guess I don't believe they're sophisticated enough. I guess I'll just say it out loud to come up with a contract that's written correctly that would cover these instances. So it would look like in the face of it, and tell me if I'm wrong, that's that you would, if you did violate a written agreement that you had, that you would have no protection of liability under the latest bill draft as currently constructed, or do you see it differently than that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I'm going to put up a small wall here, and that's just in the protection of our staff. I don't have a problem with your question, but I think we're directing it at the wrong area. Talise, if you feel comfortable answering that question, you're more than welcome to. But I do think that this question probably be better served by our military department going in that direction. I want to keep the questions on this bill as far as drafting and those types of things. Our staff does not have opinions on our pieces of information, so I want to be very, very careful to make sure we don't have them opine on anything. So I understand where you're coming from, but our staff does not opine, period.
Mr. Chairman, wherever you think this is best answered at.
Perfect.
Please direct it.
We
in
will go that
direction.
way, and then
Okay.
I see our good Lieutenant Colonel already scribbling some notes here, so this is going to be fantastic. So Representative McCann, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To both of the
Well,
previous.
we haven't gone to them yet, so I just want to make sure we have any questions answered from LSO on the bill drafting. We're on the
No,
bill
but I
drafting.
think I can, if you look at page 2, sentences 2 through 4, it kind of pertains to both of it, maybe not totally, but no cause of action shall arise against a person for returning a firearm to a firearm owner, owner. At the, the only thing that might be a little bit fuzzy about that is at the termination of the firehold agreement. So I think that kind of takes care of at least some of the liability.
A little bit. Committee, any further questions for LSO before we head over? Senator?
Mr. Chairman, my question is, this isn't just limited to military personnel, is it? This could be anybody having a transaction with a weapon, couldn't it?
That is exactly correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly correct. Yep, we do not write law for one particular section here, so you are spot on there. Representative Larson and then Representative Nicholas.
Thank you. And then maybe as the agency respond to these, I'm just curious, as I read some of the information that you provided, in some states, the agreement was between an individual and a licensed firearm dealer, which I think narrowed the band, and you would then kind of assume that they would kind of understand what they would need to have in place in that agreement to qualify for this immunity. But we really broadened this, as some states have done. I'm just curious on that, because we're trying to protect the person that's trying to be a good Samaritan here, if I understand it correctly. And then to Representative McCann's conversation on termination, you can terminate something prior to the maturity date. So if we have an agreement, Mr. Chairman, of 3 weeks, that I come in, I say I want to terminate that, even though I only give it to you yesterday, this doesn't disqualify that. And so I'm just wanting, my question is, am I understanding that right? You can, there's no requirement then to meet the maturity time of that agreement. You can terminate it any time you want. So those are my questions.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to go to Representative Nicholas, and then we'll come over to you.
You can go ahead and answer those. I'll come back.
Well, we have not, again, I want to be very, very careful here. The questions that are being asked right now, committee, are good, and I want to make sure I open this up. Do we have any questions further for LSO on the drafting of the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Talise, I guess my question is, when we're talking about an oral agreement, and I'm asking Representative Wiley to hold my firearm for a while, at what point does it, what are we looking at for termination in that sort of agreement? Is that it appears to be a judgment call. So how would that potentially be looked at as a termination?
Talise? And I would just like to say thank you to Representative Wiley for holding both of these firearms for.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Geringer, I think you guys would both have to come to a mutual understanding of what a while is. Just in any contract, you guys have to mutually consent to an agreed term. So whatever you guys agree to as a while, then that would be the term of the agreement.
Okay. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to me, the termination of an oral agreement, and Lieutenant Colonel Hinkle, you can either refute this or back me up, would be the immediate termination would be when you return the firearm. That would be automatically terminating the agreement in an oral agreement. Certainly in a written agreement, you could have a time period. I doubt that you would ever build a time period in there because, mental health doesn't go by a schedule. So I would imagine that either in a written and certainly in an oral, that the termination of the agreement would be when the firearm is returned.
Committee, any further questions for LSO? Senator Anderson and then Representative Nicholas. Senator
Mr.
Anderson.
Chairman, I'm looking at page 2, paragraph A. It's no cause of action shall arise against a person if they termination of a firearm hold agreement. So if I give the firearm back before the termination of the firearm agreement, it sounds to me like I could be liable for something. Is that correct?
Talise, if you care to expound upon the language that you have drafted on this.
Mr. Chairman, I need to give a little bit more thought to that question.
Okay.
Was a good question, wasn't it?
Representative Nicholas.
So actually, I would concur with that, just to follow up on that question. Because if it's an oral agreement and they ask for them back and you give them back, the agreement's over, which means you're no longer immune, which is an interesting concept because it kind of defeats the purpose of the bill. But I do have a question about if I'm looking at the other statutes. My first question is, how did this bill come to us? I mean, was it just a need for suicide prevention? Was there a specific incidence? Or do we have like the number of folks that actually, the states that have enacted this, where it's actually been used on a regular basis? I'm just wondering if it actually solves the problem that, from experience of what we're trying to do.
Talise, if you would like to answer that, you're more than welcome to, but we could also get that from the military department as well.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, the committee first considered this bill in 2023, and at that time, I believe it was only Montana that had a statute. So the committee's direction at that time was to draft a statute similar to Montana's statute. Since then, there have been several other states, as you can see from your packet, that have enacted laws. I'm not sure how they are working in those other states, because as you can see, a lot of them just became effective in 2025, so I don't have any data or information on how it's currently working in those states, but that is where this started. And
then I have a follow-up question. With regards to the military then, I'm curious what the practice is on base. If you have someone who is emotionally has an issue, do you take action to remove firearms from them, and what's the policy or procedures that you handle?
Okay, before we go there, I'm going to ask this one last time and be really, really clear here, committee. Do we have any further questions for LSO?
I do.
Please, Senator Kolb for LSO.
Yeah, I heard that the first time and the second time. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to Lise, what happens if on page 2, line 3, after owner, firearm owner, put a period there and strike the rest of that? Does that cause issues? And that was my question. In other words, is it harmful to do that is there other liabilities that maybe you could tell me about, or just an opinion? At this point, I realize I just sprung that on you, but just to terminate that and remove it at the termination of the firehold agreement. I mean, does that damage this in a way that's ruins the bill? That's my question. Thank you.
Talise?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I believe if you did that, it would just say that no cause of action shall arise against a person for returning a firearm to a firearm owner. So that would broaden it even more to any circumstance, anytime, regardless of whether you had an agreement or not. Anytime you give a person their firearm back, there is no cause of action at all. So I think it would broaden it immensely. I think having at the termination of the firearm hold agreement at least brings it back to that agreement that you must have with the other person.
Okay. Committee, any further questions for Talise? Seeing none, Ms. Hinkle, you have been peppered with questions and haven't even spoken a word yet. So I am going to allow you to introduce yourself to the committee. And then however you would like to proceed, whether you would like to start out with some opening comments that might address some of the committee's concerns, or if you would just like to address those questions directly immediately, you're more than welcome to do so. But please and welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Brown, Chairman Pappas, members of the committee. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Karen Hinkle. I'm the Senior Legal Advisor for Major General Porter at the Wyoming National Guard. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. And I think what I'll do is, at the outset, I just want to remind the committee that the reason that we're really looking at this bill is to address what happens that might prevent someone from holding on to a firearm if they have a friend or someone else that they know that they're concerned might harm themselves with it. And so really at the outset, if we keep that in the back of our minds as the ultimate purpose, I think that will help us as we work through some of the questions that you have all raised. I think what I will try to do here is go through kind of in order, and I hope that I caught everyone, and if I didn't, please ask me again, but I'll do my best. For Senator Kolb, who was first talking about the phrase termination of a firearm agreement and what happens, I think, if there's a disagreement about what that meant and whether that was the purpose. If we go back to that ultimate purpose of I'm holding on to this for you because I'm worried about your mental health, and I think that will help clarify the concern about it. With oral agreements, just like as in an oral lease for an apartment, for example, the facts are going to matter in the interpretation of whether something was terminated or whether there was a conflict there. If you have one of those parties who is no longer present to testify, you will have some evidentiary challenges in defending that. But ultimately, I think the purpose of this bill is to even just remove the lawsuit from being an issue for the person who held the gun in the first place. So if there is a termination, either oral, or they give the gun back, or they write a document saying this is officially terminating the agreement, all of those are methods that potentially could be used. If the committee wanted to narrow down what that looks like, that's certainly an option in the legislation. But as with anything, the more specific we try to get, sometimes we overlook the second and third order consequences of that specificity. And so it might create more problems than it solves. Any further questions on the termination piece?
Representative Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Hinkle, your last sentence I thought was was really good on unintended consequences, but it could be the inverse of that, right? So we may have this grand idea with the purest intent ever of protecting and giving immunity to somebody when maybe they don't deserve it. That could be the unintended consequences, that there's an oral agreement that never was an oral agreement, and willfully or maliciously return that gun knowing a person's in a state, and then there's no recourse because now he's granted immunity. So I think that your point is applicable on both sides of that equation. Would you argue that, or does that make sense?
Ms. Hinkle?
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Through to Senator Larson. Sir, I'm very glad you asked that question. So one of the things that we talked about last time was concern about those other actions that might warrant an authority to take action against an individual. I think where we really think about that is when there is malicious intent. For example, I want to be somehow a co-conspirator if I'm holding this weapon and give it back to the person knowing they're going to commit an illegal act. This bill does not waive immunity or protection for individuals in the event that they're engaging in other unlawful conduct. And so if you look at page 2, lines 10 through 11, I think that would address the concerns that you have with respect to those kinds of activities. It's not going to protect somebody from aiding and abetting the commission of a crime, for example. Really, all we're looking at is civil causes of action. And so that would perhaps be wrongful death if the family of somebody was upset that I returned a firearm, for example, to someone, and that person then went and committed a crime. If I knew that they were going to go commit a crime, I'm still potentially liable on the criminal side, but we might have protection then unless there was a determination that I engaged in unlawful conduct by that action, right? We're just looking at the civil liability.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
But to your point in line 10 through 12, the person that's in breach of contract or that is malicious could argue, I have an oral agreement. I had this oral agreement. And so I did this with, well within the law that gives me immunity. And that's kind of the problem I see consistent with this oral component of it, is it can be manipulated when perhaps malicious intent was intended. Would you agree?
Ms. Hinkle?
Mr. Chairman, back to Representative Larson. I would not agree. You can't contract your way out of criminal offenses, right? So I can do that, but that's not a legal contract, if that answers your question.
The lawyer beat you. Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Ms. Hinkle, so my question revolves around the fact that the other party's dead, okay? They're gone. As you, as the other person who had a said oral agreement, which maybe you did or maybe you didn't have, you could literally make up absolutely anything, right? Anything. So that's the problematic part of an oral agreement here. I forget about the scenario where you committed some robbery or whatever. I'm talking about the other party's gone and the family's now mad because their loved one is gone and they're looking for, they're upset and they're going to come after you. I mean, an oral agreement seems like, I get it. We're trying to make it easy to stop people from, hurting themselves or maybe some other people. It's a great intent. I think the devil's in the details here. I don't know how the oral agreement's going to work. Tell me, Counselor, if the other party's dead, you could claim anything in an oral agreement, and there's absolutely no way to say that was untrue because there's nobody else left. Is that not true?
Ms. Hinkle?
Representative Brown through to Senator Kolb. That is the problem with oral agreements, is it's always a proof issue, right? We have the same issue with, and again, I go back to leases because that's where my head always goes. If I'm renting a room to my friend and we get into a disagreement and that friend dies and owed me money and I want to get money back from his estate, I have a proof problem, other than the fact that maybe their things are there and there's other circumstantial things that I can rely on to help establish my case in addition to any testimony that I would provide to a court. That same challenge would exist in this circumstance. And so that's, I think, perhaps why some states have elected to require a written agreement with a firearm dealer and to limit, one, any immunity from individuals, and then two, really focus it in on businesses that are used to dealing with this kind of equipment and the safety precautions and all of those things. That is a policy choice. It's a policy choice to allow oral agreements, knowing that there would be some potential proof issues for somebody who was relying on that provision of the statute.
Okay, follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To that end, so I guess it looks like better off dumping the oral agreement part of this, I mean, in my mind, because it seems very problematic. Now, the next part would be a written agreement. Now, do you have any structure, would you contemplate some sort of document that you could hand out to people for a written agreement? Because folks they aren't counselors, they aren't attorneys, they don't know, right? What do you think about having some sort of document drafted up that you could hand out to your folks, or anybody really, that would be something they could follow as some sort of outline for an agreement? So it's really two questions I had about giving up the oral agreement, and secondarily, what are you going to do about a written agreement? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hinkle.
Representative Brown through to Senator Kolb. I think the oral agreement is a tough policy question, because there are going to be a lot of circumstances in which if you want to allow individuals the ability to hold firearms for others, which is where I think we might have a lot of circumstances in Wyoming where that would be the situation, keeping that oral agreement as an option would be very important for them, because the reality is most of these things are spur of the moment, quick, reacting to crisis moments where there isn't necessarily time to plan, and it's just, give me your gun, I'm going to hold on to it. Once you're feeling better, I'll give it back to you. And if we remove that ability, you're going to restrict immunity from folks who might have found themselves in that situation. That's a choice that you can make, but just understand that would be the consequence of it. As far as the written agreement, I will tell you that the military loves templates and forms. And so we often have documents that we will put together, at least for our folks, that would cover just this situation. So it's not out of the question to have a template available that could be provided to folks. And I certainly think that would be something that could be made publicly available. It's nothing specific to the military that folks could rely on that might meet some of your concerns. Again, the question would be, would everybody know about that and have access to it, and would it cover all situations? It probably wouldn't.
Yeah, Representative Wiley, thank you for holding on to all these firearms and then taking all this liability right now.
Yeah, that's great. And my question kind of builds on that. So I've went into these oral agreements with the fellers next to me on each side. And during this conversation, we agreed that I would only give the weapons back if I felt that it was appropriate and safe at the time. So maybe as the person that is holding the firearms, I don't think that it is going to be safe or necessary to give the firearms back. Do you foresee maybe problems with being able to retain ownership of the weapon after you've given it up, especially if we keep this oral agreement part of the bill intact?
Ms. Hinkle.
Representative Brown and Representative Wiley, just to make sure I'm understanding your question, are you asking if there is an issue, if there's a disagreement between the original owner wanting to get it back and the other person isn't returning it? I think I might have missed a nuance.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yes, Ms. Hinkle. So say we have this oral agreement, and during the agreement, we've discussed, the appropriate timing on giving it back. And that's going to be within my purview and my judgment to give this firearm back. Well, maybe I changed my mind during the course of this oral agreement that we've had, and I don't think it's safe to give the weapon back to the original owner. So then, the owner's family, they're not happy with this anymore, and then you've given your ownership of the weapon away, essentially. There's no really recourse to get it back.
Okay. Yeah, you're the lawyer, not me. Ms. Hinkle?
Representative Brown through to Representative Wiley, I think I know where you're going. And so the issue is, has the original fire owner somehow surrendered their rights to this weapon to this person who's keeping it maybe unreasonably or just, it's not certain, right? That's the squirrely piece of this oral agreement is figuring out how much burden we want to put on the firearm holder to return the weapon. And I think the thing that makes this challenging is most of us are not mental health experts, and we're going to rely in good faith on the representations of our friends helping us make sure that we feel safe giving it back to them. I think that's one reason why actually immunity is important, because what it does is it if I'm not a mental health expert and I'm trying to judge the mental health state of my friend or whoever I'm holding this weapon for, I'm probably not going to be able to do that to the degree of expertise that a psychiatrist would. And so it allows me at least the grace of some judgment and some error perhaps in making the wrong decision. And I think it would prevent people from holding on to it in the way that you're worried about and limiting it. But the other piece of your question is difficult. I think there will be circumstances potentially where that happens, that somebody holds on to the firearm because they don't want to give it back. And the resolution to that is going to still be in the court system, because I think that would fall under either breach of contract or under that other unlawful conduct piece. And again, that goes back to facts and circumstances between those two individuals that they'll have to resolve potentially through the court system.
Mr. Co-Chairman, and then Representative Larson.
Thank you. And I was just going to go to that point about breach of contract. I think if someone returns the weapon, I think someone has to return their weapon. Number one, there's no ownership change. Ownership doesn't ever go to the firearm holder. Always is going to be owned by the original, the person who asked someone to hold that weapon for them. So you have to return the property. The whole idea here is not to put the onus on the person holding the firearm to make that decision whether or not that person is mentally stable. That person initially decided for themselves that they've got a problem. That's why they gave you the weapon. So that person has to decide when it's okay for them to have their weapon back. I think the person's holding the weapon, as much as they may feel that I shouldn't give it back, I think they're required to give it back. And that's why we wanted to limit the liability for that person. So that when you do give it back and that person should happen to do something awful to themselves or someone else, that the person holding the weapon who was trying to do something good, because that person, the person with the weapon asked them to do that, that's the whole reason for this agreement. Give it back, you have to give it back, but if you're gonna give it back, we're gonna say, look, you did the right thing, something terrible happened, we're not gonna hold you liable for that.
Don't you agree, Ms. Hinkle?
Don't you agree?
Representative Brown through to Senator Pappas, yes. I have another list of questions too, unless there are other ones off of this immediate topic that I'll go back through that were raised earlier.
Representative Larson has a quick question.
I'd like to follow up, Mr. Chairman, on Chairman Pappas's point, because I'm almost kind of struggling to understand why we need the bill, because it is my firearm. Representative Wiley, I want it back. He can't hold my property when I request it back. So if he's following the law and there's damage done, how then is he liable? And is there some precedents taking place in lawsuits there that would indicate that this is a problem?
Ms. Hinkle.
Representative Brown through to Representative Larson. I have not researched precedent on the specific issues, so I'm not able to answer that specific question. However, I go back to the purpose of the legislation in the first place, which is not necessarily to address the termination aspects of it or so on. It's basically to prevent a family of someone who is deceased from perhaps an act of suicide from suing somebody who held onto the firearm and then gave it back to that person. And once they gave it back, that person then completed the act. That's really the heart of this legislation, is to incentivize and encourage people to hold on to those weapons without fearing that they may somehow be subject of a wrongful death action that could cost them significant amounts of money just because they return the firearm at a later date and maybe misjudge the situation. I see that may not have answered your question.
Mr. Chairman, you're great. You did. It just raises more question on the need for the bill to me. Thank you.
Ms. Hinkle, I know you got peppered with questions early on, so we'll let you go. Committee, if you do have questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Ms. Hinkle, I'm going to have her go through her list of questions. If you come up with more, please write them down. We're going to let her go through before we, hey, this brings up another question, pepper her with that. So I want her to go through the questions that have been asked thus far, and then we will hit her with those questions later on. Ms. Hinkle, the floor is yours to go after everything else that we've come through.
Thank you, Representative Brown. I think I answered Representative Larson's question earlier, discussing the difference between an individual and a dealer in the same state. So if there are additional questions, I'd be happy to take them. Senator Anderson, it's the second time today, asked if a holder would be liable if they return a firearm in advance of the termination of the agreement. And I think, as we've discussed, the termination of that agreement really is going to be factually based. And if you return it, it's probably the termination of the agreement. And so that would be the end. And that is when the immunity should attach. Going to Representative Nicholas, you had expressed concern that the way the statute is written means that once the agreement is terminated, then liability would no longer attach. I actually read it the completely opposite way. Ask two lawyers, you'll get two different answers, right? The way I read the subsection A is that the only time the immunity attaches is once that return of the firearm has been completed, because that's really when you're opening yourself up to potential legal consequences from whatever then happens as a result of returning that firearm. Finally, there is a question about what is the practice on base to hold firearms? And so this is going to differ from your active duty bases to your National Guard bases. The active duty bases have armories that, under certain circumstances, folks who reside on the base or members are authorized to store their personal firearms. And often you will see when somebody is experiencing mental distress, first sergeant or leadership will work with that individual to surrender the firearms, and then they are held safely and securely in the armory. And the active duty folks then have a lot more ability to determine when it is safe to release the firearms back to that individual. The Guard does not have that same luxury because our armories are a lot more restricted, and we aren't an active duty base, and we don't have the same 24/7 control over the vast majority of our members. And so we lack some of that same leadership authority because of the status differences. When I've got a part-time person who's only here on the weekend, I can't really give them a military order unless we all end up in a status. And that doesn't necessarily time out well when we're dealing with these kinds of situations because they happen any day of the week. And also with the Guard, we have people residing all over the state. And so it may not be practical for us to have a member who lives in Thermopolis where we have probably no access to restricting where that firearm could be stored or in a state location. So that's a significant difference. Active duty does have some options that the Guard don't have. The other option or difficulty for us when we're talking about military personnel is we're really only able to handle those situations where we have military personnel. So if we're looking at veterans or separated members, many of whom still undergo a lot of stress, those options would not be available to them. I think those are all the questions. If I missed one, please let me know.
Ms. Hinkle, thank you very much for answering those questions. So what we're going to do, committee, we'll go ahead and open this up for further discussion. And if you're ready, we'll start firing shots at Ms. Hinkle's feet and see if she can dance around them. Representative Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question about the draft itself. Because it talks about having an immunity if you have a contract. On the other hand, this really isn't an immunity as much as it is the elimination of a cause of action, which are two different things. So I'm curious if you have comments on that, because if you can raise an immunity by saying there was a contract, and then if this law if you take out the cause of action claim, so a cause of action can still occur under the rules of civil procedure, but you have a valid defense which provides you immunity, and they're two different things. So I'm just curious, have you thought about that? And because it doesn't make sense to me to just eliminate a cause of action. Rather, if you want to provide immunity is one thing, but to eliminate a cause of action is different. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Ms. Hinkle.
Representative Brown through to Representative Nicholas. I worked with Talise and Ms. Koski in the Wyoming Military Department to try to figure out what's a cleaner way to address that concern? And I think what happened in the last section as well, or last session, was we didn't focus enough on civil, and we had, I want to use the phrase, right, limitation of liability, and then we had immunity from, I think I've got some proposed amendments that Talise helped draft that I think will address some of those concerns. We did not address the cause of action language. Perhaps the intent, and I think this is again borrowed from other states where that was the language that they chose to adopt. I think perhaps the intent was to, dissuade people from filing a cause of action in the first place, as opposed to looking at it as an affirmative defense like we would in criminal law, saying, well, here's your suit, now you have to affirmatively defend yourself, and then we'll drop it there. So it really just depends on if you want to be proactive and say there is no cause of action in the first place, or if you want to allow there to be a cause of action and then have them defend and incur the expense at least for that initial court action. That gets kind of technical, but that's how I would see it.
To follow up on that, for those folks that aren't lawyers, when you have a no cause of action, that means that the court dismissed it before it even hears it. In other words, you can't bring this cause of action because there was a contract, which is different than saying, bringing a charge against a person that's saying that you're culpable because of your conduct, and then rising up as a defense. So you're already in court, and you go to the court and you say, on a motion for summary judgment or directed verdict, you say there was a contract, and under the law, if we pass this law, there is no liability. And they're two quite different things, basically. So I just want to make sure that this committee understands the difference between the two.
Okay. Any further questions for the military department? Yes, Senator Barlow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Lieutenant Colonel, the other states, the first law was Montana, I guess, in my understanding from the sequence of events, and I've not been party to all these conversations, just reviewing the minutes of the meeting. Thank you very much from your last meeting. But subsequent states have actually gone to the FFL, someone who actually, a dealer, a licensed FFL dealer. Would you care to opine on why that is? I mean, I have some thoughts, but we've gone from person, meaning anybody, and let's be clear, as I've been working on restoration of rights for 5 years, more than that actually, there are numerous people in our communities that should not, or it's illegal for them to possess firearms, period. This doesn't maybe speak to that. They'd still be liable for the criminal side of that if Mr. Wiley was unable to actually possess firearms and took them into existence. But I want to know why we've gone to an FFL now, and I think you maybe brought it up in my mind, is the security aspect of it or the Legal Responsibility Act of it, part of it. So any thoughts about that? And then I have another question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Ms. Hinkle?
Representative Brown, through to Senator Barlow, I think it comes down to the policy choice that each state chose to make. And you have, on the one hand, allowing firearm dealers to hold on to those weapons for all the reasons that you can think of, right? Security, their experience doing it, perhaps they have more secure vaults. There are all sorts of things that I can envision might be a reason to limit it just to those dealerships and licensees. Other states, I think, have elected to make it a broader offering, recognizing that a lot of times the discussion isn't going to be one where the person has time to say, okay, I'm feeling a little funky, I'm going to drive to this dealership and surrender my weapon. I think it has been a choice to allow them to go seek friends or family members and surrender it in perhaps a more immediate fashion than they may be able to get at a firearm dealer. For example, if you had a crisis moment in the evening and everyone was closed, you wouldn't be able to rely on the firearm dealer to take the weapon at that moment. You would need to rely on a friend. And so it's, again, that comes down to me, to a policy decision. If the intent of this body is to recommend that legislation go forward, the question that will need to be resolved is how broad do we want to extend the protection, and who do we want to incentivize to hold these firearms in these various circumstances that might arise. And it's hard to predict because every case is going to be unique and different, but those are some of the options that I've seen other states pursue.
Follow up, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So part of the discussion in the handout was Wyoming's Good Samaritan Law 11120 is not, could be interpreted not to cover this. Obviously, that was just changed recently, just came into effect, I guess, July 1st of this year. And so what is the experience of other states in using Good Samaritan for this particular aspect? Thank you. Whether they address mental health crises, which is the terminology directly out of our current statute, whether other states actually address mental health crises in their Good Samaritan law, and two, if there's been any challenges to that when it comes to this firearms hold type arrangement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Hinkle, when you're done scribbling.
Representative Brown, thanks through to Senator Barlow. To be honest, I have no idea. And so I'll need to do some research on that. Every state's Good Samaritan laws are going to be unique based on their state code. And any causes of action or challenges that may have arisen will be unique to the state based on circumstances. So I'll do my best to do a little scan, at least of the states that have passed legislation like this, to see if their Good Samaritan law is similar to ours. And then that might help as you think through this.
Okay, Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm a bit remiss on not asking this question years ago, but I'm gonna ask it now. What's the anecdotal evidence for the need for this bill? I think, it seems like, I could argue that it's a bill chasing a problem we don't have, but what evidence do we have that this is gonna help the situation? What history can you help me out with that would point to the need for this bill right now and how this bill is going to improve the situation? Just the background history that I should have asked years ago and I'm asking now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hinkle.
Representative Brown through to Senator Kolb. If you give me just a moment, I'm looking through slides from last session. And when we've talked about this, typically what we raise is that Wyoming is historically one of the top 3 states when we consider the number of suicides that occur and are completed within the state. Of those completed suicides, the vast majority are completed using a firearm. Research indicates that for folks who are completing or contemplating suicide, when the mind is going through that thought cycle, it starts thinking very, very quickly. And if it is possible to put a break between those thoughts and the action of suicide, then the likelihood of preventing that suicide grows exponentially. The intent behind bills like this are simply to create barriers to easy access to firearm when somebody is going through that process. What's difficult is you're thinking of a situation where they've got enough forewarning of their mental health deteriorating that they would have given the firearm away initially. But a lot of times folks do have that awareness that they're starting to get into a place where they're maybe contemplating things that maybe they haven't before. So that's really the intent behind it. It's also one of those issues that is uniquely well, it's not really unique, actually. It plagues military service members and veterans. And if anybody has been following the news recently, that has been an issue that's impacted F.E. Warren pretty significantly within just the past month. And so it is a serious issue. I think the intent is to really assist in creating breaks and reducing opportunities to easy access of means for folks to take their lives. Now, of course, they could go do other things, right? But firearms do tend to be the way that people rely on. So that's really the genesis behind it. I can provide you some more stats and statistics if you'd like, probably via email, but just let me know.
Follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me reiterate, I think this is a great idea and concept we're trying to handle here. The issue is that if Representative Wiley over there didn't get the information that his friend was having a crisis, and it's kind of too late. And men aren't like our opposite sex. Men are really quick and choose a weapon, to end it. And unfortunately, they don't talk to their friends much. But I will tell you, why wouldn't, if you're a friend, my friend came to me and said, I'm feeling bad, and I feel iffy about my guns, I would take them. Come hell or high water, I'd take them. Because I'm a friend, right? So I just think, you know, Mr. Wiley never knew that I was having a problem. And incidentally, Mr. Wiley might be using my guns without my permission, and I don't know what that would happen either, but I trust Mr. Wiley. But I just don't know how it's really gonna do us any good to, you know, to have this after the fact and what type of, I appreciate what you're doing, is what I'm just trying to say. Thank you for the chance to comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, any further questions for Ms. Hinkle of the Military Department before we open this up? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Hinkle. Oh, Representative Posey, I'm sorry, I looked right past you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question in terms of the legality of the firearm. You know, in Wyoming, I have just for example, I have a 30-30 rifle that was handed down from my grandpa. And I think you'll see a lot of that in terms of legal ownership of the firearm. And if some crime or some incident took place, what's going to be the circumstances when that person is not legally the owner of that firearm? Thank you.
Ms. Hinkle.
Representative Brown through to Representative Posey. I just want to reiterate that the person holding the firearm pursuant to an agreement is not protected from any criminal liability. So if they do something with it, they're still going to be potentially on the hook pursuant to whatever the evidence might be. And then if they return it, right, the person who owns the firearm correctly, hopefully they're owning it correctly, is on the hook for whatever they may do with that firearm. And if you're talking about whether the original owner holds that firearm legally, that's going to be an issue that lays with that original firearm holder. I don't think that the intent of the bill is to require any onus on the firearm holder to identify that perhaps they're holding something that somebody inaccurate or illegally owns or doesn't have registered or has not met some requirement. I think that's where you were going, but if I'm not, please let me know. It won't address that circumstance. I think that's outside of the scope of the bill.
Perfect. I heard an echo there. All right. Ms. Hinkle, thank you very much. Very, very detailed information. Ms. Hanson as well from you. Thank you very much for your information. We're going to go ahead and open up this bill for public comment. If there's any public comment on the firearm hold, we call it a liability, limited liability, but I don't have anybody online. Mr. Crenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joey Karenni, resident of Carbon County. I do like the fact that we're looking at reducing or eliminating the civil penalty for anything that happens after a firearm is returned to somebody. But I think all the peripheral conversation and maybe some of the content of the bill just is confusing and potentially unnecessary. To answer my take on some of the questions, Senator Kolb, you know, if I'm going to give my guns to my friend and not give him a reason why or tell him I'm in trouble, my first answer, maybe it's because I am who I am. I'm like, dude, I'm not taking your guns. I don't know what you've done with these. So I believe that the concept of having some kind of written document that states a few things would be beneficial, but maybe shouldn't be required. The same way I can go down to my clerk's office and get what the state would accept as a bill of sale for a vehicle. You fill in what you do, you sign it. At least later in court, you can argue, you know, certain things. This person gave me these firearms. If the police come into my house and find this firearm that somebody gave me, I've got nothing on it, and it's found that that firearm was used in a crime. None of this covers any of the potential criminal liability for other things. Representative Wiley's point of what if I don't want to give the guns back? That's a good friend thing. But also in Wyoming, if you're in possession of someone else's firearm and they're saying give it back and you don't, it's automatically a felony regardless of the value of the weapon. So again, now we're getting into other potential criminal stuff that this doesn't address, that you wouldn't have any documentation on, or maybe a good legal standing to argue. The colonel stated that the military really does like to create forms and they have stuff and they're putting stuff together, and I know for a fact that that's true. So maybe a process of seeing what the military department can develop, making it optional and available. I know Mr. Thompson isn't here today, but seeing if the sheriffs and police chiefs would put the form in their office, on their website, saying, this is the best practice the state comes up without making it mandatory, and maybe some included language in there on, return upon request, understanding Fourth Amendment and the separation between civil and criminal liability would be prudent. I get the point. And if it's just going to be focused on removing civil liability from somebody who gives a firearm back to somebody who properly owns that firearm, little bit of language change, I don't think we have a problem. But all the other things we're talking about, they're either crimes, concerns, or court issues of their own. Beyond that, the only concern I would have about allowing the state to recognize an oral agreement is what if it's used in the other way? I thought I was having problems, so I gave these firearms to this guy as a way to getting firearms to somebody who shouldn't have them, or relieving yourself of responsibility for a crime that was committed with that firearm. I'll point to last year in Sheridan County, there's now a court case going on about who was the person that got the firearms to the individual that committed this crime under what pretenses. So if we could just focus on limiting the liability of the individual who gives the firearms back after they give the firearms back, and maybe provide a document that people can choose to use, and a small educational advertising portion saying, this is what the state recognizes, I think we'd be in a better place. And to Representative Posey, it goes all ways. Whether that firearm was used in a crime before, whether it's a stolen firearm, there's a lot of other legal criminal issues that I agree can come up in the situation, but I don't think they're the focus or the content of the bill. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions.
Okay. Committee, any questions for Mr. Kearney? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Kearney. Any further public testimony? Seeing nobody jumping out of their chairs to come rush up here, we'll close public testimony. Committee will bring the bill back to the dais. What is the pleasure of the committee on this bill?
Move the bill.
Moved by Senator Pappas, Co-Chairman Pappas. Seconded by Representative Geringer. All right, committee, let's work the bill. If you will notice, there is a.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address.
Please, Representative Nicholas.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we could spend half a day on this bill today, working through it. I don't think the bill's ready for prime time, and so my question is, would it be valuable to take an informal vote on who wants to move this bill forward, and if we want to work it now? And we may want to transfer it to judiciary, because that's probably where this bill belongs anyway. The idea that we're here to serving the military, but this addresses all jurisprudence, everything in every individual in the state of Wyoming. So I'm not sure it's a proper topic for this committee. And literally, I've got probably 25 amendments for this bill. I just don't know if we want to go through all that process without deciding if that's the process we want to follow, or if there's a way to shorten it for the benefit of everyone here in this committee. I think we might want to have that discussion first.
Okay, committee, so what I will say is we do have a motion on the table. So while I appreciate what's going on there, I think at this point, unless the bringer of the motion and the bringer of the second are willing to remove those and then have that informal, we currently have a motion and we are getting ready to work the bill. So before we go down that rabbit hole, is there any discussion on the bill similar to that of Representative Nicholas? Or should we just go ahead, work the bill?
Well,
Senator Anderson?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Representative Nicholas. I think this belongs in judiciary. This treads on Second Amendment rights all over the place. And I don't know whether we should work it, since it does apply to all citizens of Wyoming, not just the military. I think this needs to be at judiciary probably.
Okay.
So.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I disagree with the two gentlemen. We've worked this for many years now. We need to, and to now at the last hour, the last meeting, to try to transfer it to another committee, it'll just put it off for another session. It's just too late to take it to judiciary. I think I for one, want to work the bill and see where it goes.
Okay. Somebody's chomping at the bit. Representative Larson?
I have great respect for the chairman's opinion on that, but I would follow up with the question, is it not better to do it right? You know, I appreciate the last minute, last hour, but as we contemplate this, is it worthy of making sure that it's done right rather than voting on it, even though it is the last meeting?
Okay. Well, what I will say at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and stop the back and forth discussion because number one, we're behind schedule, but number two, the bringer of the motion, who is the co-chairman, does not seem to be in favor of pulling this back. So what we will do is I will encourage the committee to either work the bill and make the amendments as necessary as we work the bill, or vote down the bill if you decide to not sponsor it as a committee-sponsored bill. The other thing that I will mention is this has been something that this committee has worked on for 3 years now. We have heard this, and this committee is well-versed. Just because we have other committees that handle other, as the term was used, jurisprudence, I don't disagree with that. This committee will be voting on this bill regardless of which committee it comes out of. It is our responsibility to handle the legislation that is brought before us and decide on that information as it comes forward. So the committee will not be transferring this to the Judiciary Committee at this point. We will work this bill. So let's go ahead and start.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Nicholas.
I'd move to table.
Motion to table. Second. There is a second. That is a non-debatable motion. And I don't think that's a roll call vote, unless anybody wants to make any motions on that. But at this point, there has been a motion to table this bill indefinitely. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no?
No.
Okay, that motion has been adopted. This bill will be postponed indefinitely, tabled indefinitely. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it should be clear that I don't think anybody on this committee doesn't believe this is an important issue and valuable to continue the discussion. But I'll just say from my perspective, I just returned some firearms to a friend. There was no agreement about the termination. In fact, I didn't even have an inventory of exactly what I had. And I realized that when I returned them, that there were firearms present that I did not even know were in a particular container. How's that, for lack of a better word? So there's no question this is important. I think, though, the breadth of what this bill impacts is very significant, beyond military, beyond all of that. I'm pleased to continue to have the discussion as an individual and see if there's maybe a path forward with maybe my co-chair or something. But I certainly understand and have my own reservations, not even having the background that all of you have had in this. I certainly understand there's some reservations, but clearly this is not a reflection on the importance of the issue and the challenges that we have in our society. So thank you for your continued work on this.
Okay. Committee, yes, Representative Nicholas.
So I just want to follow up on that as well. As I was reading through this earlier this week, it occurred to me that this probably ought to be in the Good Samaritan statute as a specific criteria, as another exception. It kind of fits in there better than, and so I think that, and I'd be happy to work on that if we want to pursue with this as we move forward after session to kind of get our arms around it so that, because the concept makes sense to me. Thank you.
I'd also like to just thank the military department and our LSO staff for the multitude of hours that were spent on this between the two of you guys. So thank you guys very much for the work. Ms. Hanson and our good counselor in this committee. So Representative Larson.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd hope that we'd keep it in this committee. I look at the makeup of this committee and I'd put it up against judiciary any day of the week. And we have the history on it. And I think this prevents them from, or helps prevent them from having to plow new ground or replow the ground over again. So I would hope we'd keep it here. This is a good group of people.
There's nothing saying that once a bill gets sponsored by a committee, it can't be referred to another committee for hearing and go over that same information at a later date and time. So with that, committee, it is 10:37 by my clock. We are going to take let's call it an 8-minute break. take a little bit of a break, and we will move into our next portion of our discussions. Thank you for the hard work on this. We'll be back at 10:45. So I'm just going to let everybody notice, I'm running a clock up here that was way off, and I was not aware of that. So we got an extra couple of minutes there on our time frame. Everybody's looking at their watch going, 10:37, the heck it is. Anyways, it is 10:46 by everybody else's watch, including mine now, when I actually look at the correct one here. And that puts us about 20 minutes behind session here. Put us a little bit here, but we're going to move into our 10:30 bill draft, which is the English language proficiency for CDL drivers. Bill draft 26 LSO 173. Ms. Hanson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting Bill Draft 26 LSO 173, version 0.4, English proficiency commercial motor vehicle drivers. This bill draft was requested at the committee's August meeting. This bill draft is based on Oklahoma Statute 6-126.2, English proficiency requirement. So walking through the bill draft, Section 1 begins on page 2, line 1, by creating Wyoming Statute 31-18-608. Subsection A on page 1, lines 6 through 21 defines proficiency in the English language to mean an operator of a commercial vehicle can demonstrate proficiency of the English language sufficiently to converse with the general public in the English language, understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, respond to official inquiries in the English language, and make entries on reports and records in the English language. Subsection B on page 3, lines 1 through 3 prohibits an operator of a commercial vehicle from operating a commercial vehicle within the state if the operator is unable to demonstrate proficiency in the English language. Subsection C on page 3, lines 5 through 10 imposes a civil penalty of $1,000 for any operator who violates the English language proficiency requirement, and it also prohibits that operator from operating a commercial vehicle within the state until the operator is able to demonstrate proficiency in the English language. The staff comment on page 3 highlights that the committee may wish to consider how an operator of a commercial vehicle can demonstrate proficiency in the English language to avoid being prohibited from operating under this statute. The Oklahoma statute does not specify how such proficiency should be demonstrated. Subsection D on page 4, lines 1 through 7 imposes a criminal penalty on any operator of a commercial vehicle who operates a commercial vehicle within the state while under the driving prohibition. The criminal penalty is a misdemeanor punishable by a fine of not more than $1,000, imprisonment for not more than 90 days, or both. Subsection E on page 4, lines 9 through 12 imposes a civil penalty of $3,000 on the motor carrier whose operator has violated the English language proficiency requirement. Subsection F on page 4, lines 14 through 23, and page 5, lines 1 through 9, requires the Highway Patrol Division Enforcement Officer or Peace Officer who issued a citation for a violation of this section to immediately hold the commercial vehicle and notify the motor carrier of the location of the commercial vehicle. Once the motor carrier pays the $3,000 civil penalty and prevents an operator who meets all requirements under the law to operate a commercial vehicle in the state, then the motor carrier can take possession of the commercial vehicle. If the motor carrier is unable to either pay the civil penalty or present a qualified operator, not later than 12 hours after receiving notification, the Highway Patrol Division Enforcement Officer, Peace Officer, must notify the owner of the cargo being transported by the commercial vehicle. After receiving the notification, the cargo owner may arrange for the transfer of the cargo to another commercial vehicle. The staff comment on page 5 highlights that the committee may wish to consider what happens if law enforcement cannot determine who the cargo owner is, or if the cargo owner cannot be reached. What happens if the cargo owner does not arrange for a transfer of the cargo to another commercial vehicle? Is the cargo then forfeited? Is the 12-hour time period of the motor carrier to pay the civil penalty and present a qualified operator enough time? And how does this subsection interact with the civil forfeiture process outlined in Wyoming Statute 7-2105? Section 2 on page 5, lines 29 and 30, and page 6, lines 1 through 12, amends Wyoming Statute 31-18-701 by requiring the Highway Patrol Division, any other enforcement officers designated by the department, and any peace officer of any county or municipality to police and enforce the English language proficiency statute, and authorizes them to issue citations for any violations of the English language proficiency statute. Section 3 on page 6, line 14 provides an effective date of July 1st, 2026, and I'll stand for any questions.
All right, committee, we're going to make sure we prompt this one very clearly this time. Is there any questions for Ms. Talise Hansen on the drafting of the bill? Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talise, on page 5 on your staff comments where you talk about forfeiture, just to make sure I understand that correctly, forfeiture would mean that you forego the ownership of the cargo or whatever that is. Am I understanding that correctly?
Ms. Hansen?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, Wyoming Statute 72105 deals with the disposition of property being seized or held. So it says if when personal property is held by any peace officer, and it goes through some requirements of that. And so it's just outlining, I'm not sure how that's going to interact with the statute currently in front of you.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. And so I guess I'm just wanting to make sure I'm understanding that terminology used in the comment on forfeiture accurately. So, Mr. Chairman, then am I understanding then on the reference to 72105 is that the disposition of the cargo, if it's held, needs to be further defined? And maybe a follow-up question on that is, I don't see anything in the draft language that would indicate that the cargo being held is at risk of ownership transfer anywhere. So just help me as I understand the draft that I'm reading that accurately.
Ms. Hansen?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that was just a note for you to consider. I'm sure the Highway Patrol can discuss more about them holding property and how that
Okay.
process works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talise, page 3, line 7, the $1,000 amount. Did that come from any surrounding states, or I guess how did we come up with that idea, what the $1,000 amount being the proper amount? That's my question.
Ms. Hansen?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, the $1,000 amount was what was in the Oklahoma statute.
Committee, any further questions for Ms. Hansen on the drafting of the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Barlow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for LSO's attorney, Ms. Hansen, 1,000, below 1,000, below 1,000 is also a misdemeanor. This contemplates a misdemeanor, so that would be, I think, the upper dollar limit. Would you talk about a bondable versus a non-bondable offense, i.e. jail time plus, I mean, the combination of jail and prison time makes it bondable versus not bondable? And we don't have, if you don't want to go into there yet, but you can think about it till we get to the working of the bill. But if you have a jail time, then that individual has the ability to call for a jury trial. And that's something that our courts are actually struggling with right now with a lot of these offenses, traffic offenses that have jail time, and then folks are calling for a jury trial, and that becomes problematic for the courts and for et cetera. So any comment on first of all, 1,000 below is misdemeanor in Wyoming, unless you do some other things. And 2, the bondable, at least that's the term I'm familiar with, bondable versus non-bondable. Would you speak to that? If it now is the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hansen?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Barlow, I would have to look into that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. Committee, anything further? Seeing none. I will also say a couple of the questions that were raised as we get moving forward here. You do have a packet of information that YDOT has recently dropped off, should be sitting there It's a draft bill as well as a letterhead with some information on some proposed amendments. Was just given to us this morning, and I believe the director is going to speak to that as well, so might have some information on some of these questions. Director, with that, we'll call you to the hot seat, sir. If you don't mind introducing yourself, you got the whole cast and crew here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Darren Westby, Director, Wyoming Department of Transportation. Good morning. First, Mr. Chairman, I will fall on the sword and apologize for the lateness of you getting our review packet and suggested changes this morning. It's not how I like to do business, but it was a little miscommunication last week on who was going to submit it. I'll take complete blame. I think it ended up on me anyway. But anyway, in front of you, after the team digested the draft bill, spoke with some adjacent states, we came up with some holes in which we're concerned about enforcing and a whole bunch of things as we were going through this. I think the bill's intent is clean as we're going to present some of the modifications as well as the why behind the modifications. I think that's important as well. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, how would you like us to proceed on our suggested changes?
You know what, Director, what I'll do is I'll just have you guys walk through whatever you guys feel is the most appropriate way to handle this. We've gone through the bill draft on our side as far as the drafting of it. So if you guys have concerns, you guys want to talk about the concerns and what that looks like and then go through the amendment, or if you guys would just like to just start busting straight through the amendment, we're welcome to do that as well.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I can get started and then they can clean up wherever I'm lacking. And so on page 1, depending on how we make some amendments later, we'll have to come back to page 1 because it'll have to clean up the title. On page 2, looking at it, really what we're trying to do is just tie it back to CFR on the testing, on how to test. FMCSA has developed that within their policy, and I think there's actually a document that you all probably have from that that kind of outlines the how an English proficiency should be demonstrated, rather than tying it into very specific, this is how you do it. Let's tie it back to FMCSA so it's consistent across the country. On page 3, looking at that, our suggestion is to combine 1 through 3 with 5 through 10 and insert criminal versus the civil penalty. And I'll probably pause there and let the team speak to some of the why on that.
Okay. And just for the record, if we could with the other witnesses, just go ahead and introduce yourself, first name, last name, and title.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on this. Representative Brown, senators, representatives. Specific to that fact on the criminal
Could we
section.
get his name, Mr. Chairman, please?
Oh, I thought I said Lieutenant Kyle McKay with the Wyoming Highway Patrol.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're all right.
Speaking specifically to the criminal element and taking out the civil penalty, currently WYDOT or the Wyoming Highway Patrol does not have a civil assessment division to be able to have a process to, put civil penalties on companies or drivers. So that's why we changed that from civil to criminal.
Yep. Hold on. Yeah, so I'll have you pull that a little closer. Representative Larson?
So does that mean that then that this is just viewed in the same way a traffic violation is?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Looking on page, and I want to say, Mr. Chairman, thank you to Ms. Hanson for her staff comments. A lot of her comments and questions led us down our path of investigation as well. So on page 4, this is just cleanup of the combination of B and C. And then the striking the most of the rest of page 4 and the top of page 5 is I think some of the questions that we've had is, how do we go after an operator? How do we sit on a vehicle for 12 hours? How do we actually enforce what we're trying to say here? Not to say that we don't disagree that it's maybe the motor carrier who is hiring the individual who is breaking the law. But at this point, I know FMCSA and some of the other acronyms that the people to my left here can probably enunciate better. They're working on that on a federal level to ensure that there's some penalties on the carrier as opposed to the operator, but I'll let the team kind of describe more of the why on that modification.
I'm seeing a smile. Is that for you, Captain?
Chairman, good morning. Captain David Wagner with Wyoming Highway Patrol. To my immediate left is Troy McAlpine, the Port of Entry Operations Manager, and Lieutenant McKay already introduced himself as well with the agency. So good morning. Thanks for letting us be here today to go over some of our suggestions to the draft. And in our discussion meeting, I think the best way to surmise what, as a group, we came up with the initial part of the draft in regards to the interaction with the driver on scene is very good. The secondary part where we get into the holding of cargo and civil penalties and companies paying civil fines and having 12 hours to do so. The intent in all that, based on how Oklahoma drafted theirs and what we're all referencing here, the intent and all that is very good. The practicality, especially in Wyoming, there's a lot of problems on that aspect of the draft. So the front end of the draft looks really good in enforcement and allowing other law enforcement officers in the state of Wyoming, not just Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance certified inspectors with the Wyoming Highway Patrol, to be the only law enforcement to be enforcing non-English language speaking commercial vehicle drivers within the state. So again, that's kind of a general snapshot of what we've kind of come up here with the changes. So the enforcement on the front end in interaction with the driver and allowing all law enforcement peace officers within the state to enforce that is very good. A lot of the stuff on the back end, though, with the draft, like I said, we have a lot of concerns with. And just referencing from my experiences back when I was a real trooper, I could be on a night shift in a Wyoming winter blizzard and sometimes be the only person out in that area. Before I promoted, I was over in Albany County in Laramie, and the storms over there could get really bad. You could get sent to 20 plus crashes in the scope of that one shift. Not all, but a majority of those crashes would typically involve a commercial motor vehicle. If time would allow, you would do a Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance minimum level 3 inspection on the driver. And so say 20 of those crashes, 18 involved commercial motor vehicles. And you had time to do maybe 8 of those inspections if you're not going from call to call to call, trying to keep pace with everything going on. And then 2 of those inspections, you had non-English language proficient drivers. To be able to manage what the back end of this draft bill is presenting just isn't practical, because you can't sit with that truck and that truck driver for 12 hours. The expectation for a company representative to come out in a blizzard and provide $3,000 for the civil penalty aspect to get that load and that truck released is not practical as well. So that's why in the packet you're presented today, a lot of the back end of this draft has been struck out there, starting with what is currently section E through F. And then also going back to page 1, trying to get away from the civil aspect of it all and make it a criminal penalty.
And a lot of the reason the civil language is in there is because, again, this was copied from the Oklahoma draft bill. And Lieutenant McKay did reach out to counterparts within Oklahoma and did finally get a conversation today. And when the time is appropriate, he can expound upon that conversation as well.
I think there's probably no time better than the current, so. Yes, Representative Larson?
So my question then, if we strike that on the back end, if you find winter storm or beautiful summer day, if you find somebody that's not English proficient, violates this, what do you do?
Mr. Chairman?
Captain?
Currently, what the process is if they are placed out of service by one of our agency certified inspectors through the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, that driver is placed out of service. Again, you got to keep in mind, not all of these happen at a controlled setting at a port of entry. These also take place at roadside, could take place at any part of Wyoming. And once they're placed out of service, they're no longer able to operate that commercial motor vehicle until the company gets a driver out to that location that can operate that vehicle and sufficiently communicate in English. If that's not the case, they stay at the port until the company can get that arrangement done. If it's a roadside, we do our best to get them to a place of safe harbor where they then sit and wait.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
So it'd be similar to doing a safety inspection on the mechanical integrity of the vehicle. If you find that the brakes aren't adequate or something's out of compliance, the truck it's a safety issue, and so out of service means you stay where you're at, or am I saying that right? They would stay where you're at, and with your proposed amendments, the Highway Patrol would still have the ability to do similar action if they found them to be have an English deficiency.
Sure.
Captain?
Representative Larson, that would be correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Co-Chairman? Okay, Senator Kolb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a question about I guess, how it would actually work. And it's really coming about because you mentioned that, maybe you're overwhelmed someday, you got a lot of wrecks. My concern, I guess, and this is what my question really revolves around, is you have an option to let those folks go. I mean, when you find they're not English, you suspect they're not proficient in English, you haven't checked them yet. Well, you just let them go because you're overwhelmed. I mean, and that's the question I have, is that what compels you to give them a test, a check, using the federal standards, and opting not to do it? I mean, is that an option for you, for the Highway Patrol right now, I guess? And what would you think about making it mandatory that you cannot let anyone go that you suspect is not proficient in English? So that's my concerns, and I guess I'm looking forward to your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll open this up for whoever wants to take that at the table. Lieutenant?
Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb. Yeah, I understand your concern on that, but really on any citation that we have enforced on our traffic citations, we have the discretion whether to write a person a warning or a ticket. So let me just kind of break down how in a perfect world this will work, is if we got to be able to have it solid, tangible, and enforceable by all law enforcement. That's what this bill is looking at. And right now, we're just talking about the Wyoming Highway Patrol. So we need to look at it from an aspect of how we're going to get all law enforcement to be able to enforce this bill. So if we can make this a criminal penalty and an arrestable offense, that officer will have the option within his jurisdiction to write the citation for it, arrest the driver, and then per their towing procedures, they can tow the vehicle. And then once that vehicle is at the tow yard or in the possession of the tow company, their responsibility for that vehicle and that load is off the law enforcement officer. So that's in the perfect world of how that would work. In a situation where we are 20 crashes down, we do the best that we can to get the highway open to make sure everybody's safe on our roadways. Whether that is an immediate arrest of an offender or doing what we can to get the highways open. So I understand what you guys are saying, but I think the best way, and as far as the subsection E on this, we just don't have the capabilities within our state we don't have an civil assessment division. We don't have hearings to be able to set for these companies to challenge this $3,000 fine that this civil assessment division may impose. We don't have facilities to hold these vehicles. We don't have the manpower to sit on the vehicles at the facilities. We don't have loading docks where they can transfer goods. What happens if you get a bull hauler? Where are we going to stick the cows? What if we get US mail that's contracted? We all know mail's got to be delivered in a timely manner. So the subsection E part of this can become very problematic for our state, and I think that's just the reason why we need to stay away from that part.
Mr. Chairman, if
Director,
I
please.
could get them to just talk a little bit about, to your question. Can you give them the statistics since we started pulling people out of service on ELP?
Yes.
On that real quick, I think that would, the shall to may, I was shocked by the numbers right off the top of my head.
Lieutenant?
Chairman Brown. So as of June 25th of 2025 to October 15th, we've had 497 drivers that have been placed out of service. Those are the 497 that, that we stopped. 497 since June 25th till October 15th.
And that was our last meeting, is that right? Or like?
No, that was just the last time I was able to pull the stats
Just
in
pull, okay.
preparation for a meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what for? I mean, did you have to break those down into categories? How many of them are any of those for English deficiency? Or what's the primary reasons for it?
All of them are all 497 are for that federal regulation of 391.11B2.
And follow up, how many of those are on I-80 versus someplace else?
Oh, I'd have to go back and rerun the statistics per highway, but I would say a lot of them are along I-80 and I-25.
Thank you.
Senator Culp?
Follow up to my other line of questions. So I understand there's only so many folks out there. I get it. You guys are like the Lone Rangers out there on our highways trying to deal with problems. Is there any reporting that you do internally that would go back to Director Westby or somebody that would say, I encountered a bunch of these people that I think really didn't have any English-speaking skills that were proficient. However, there was circumstances, that I had to deal with. Get the highways open, keep them safe, those kind of things. I mean, do we gather any data that 8 Highway Patrol folks would fill out in regards to them not being able or making a decision, which I respect, that they can't deal with it then because they just don't have the bandwidth to do it? Do we have data on that? I mean, that's important to me. I mean, I don't know how many folks we're letting go. Maybe you need more people. I don't know. But I'd like to know how many folks maybe that we're not addressing. And if we could maybe have some numbers on that, that would help out with the question about, is there an issue or is there not an issue with letting folks go that lack English proficiency? And thank you for your work, though. That's 497 folks off the road that shouldn't be on there.
Lieutenant? Or Captain? Or Director?
Mr. Chairman, I'll try to, how many warnings versus citation on this out of service have we issued?
Lieutenant?
Representative, this particular report does not show the issues from citations to warnings, but what I can tell you, per a New York Times article, that we are the third highest enforcement agency in Wyoming at the time that that article was written.
So I'm gonna ask a question really quick. So if we're placing these 497 commercial motor vehicles out of service, they're sitting there waiting until somebody can get them an English proficient speaker out there to drive these vehicles. That's what's happening. So they could be sitting on the side of the road or they're sitting at the port. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct? We've had 500 vehicles sitting there waiting to be moved?
Chairman, there's a lot of things that go behind that. If there's a co-driver that can sufficiently speak English, then that vehicle can be driven by the co-driver. There's been instances, and I was on one of them on 287 just a week ago. This was the second time this person was stopped since November or September 13th. We stopped him again on September 30th. That driver was placed out of service and he was arrested and his vehicle was towed. So there's a lot of circumstances that can go behind whether the vehicle just sits there on the side of the road. What we don't want to do is leave people stranded. We want to get the vehicle off the roadway as soon as we can by having the right qualified person driving the vehicle.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. Representative Nicholas.
Yeah, I'm curious now, of those 497, do you have statistics on how many of those happen because they're pulled over versus going through and stopping it?
Lieutenant.
Chairman, Senator Nicholas, or Representative Nicholas, those are all inspections that are randomly conducted amongst commercial vehicles that go either through our port of entry. We don't have a way of differentiating between port of entry personnel where the vehicle comes through the port or troopers stopping the vehicle on the side of the road.
Just
Follow up.
Just for example, the person that you cited him twice in the last couple of weeks. Is that because you recognized the vehicle and so you were just double checking? Or, I mean, what was your reasonable suspicion to pull him over in the first place?
We conducted a high enforcement operation down on the state of 287 between Colorado and Wyoming. We did a joint operation. We had all commercial vehicles pull over. We checked their paperwork and then whether they we did an inspection on them or we allowed the vehicle to go through.
So follow up on that, Mr. Chairman. So when you perform those intensive, stops, how much of that 497 are derivative of when performing those activities?
I couldn't tell you through our reporting.
And percentage-wise, I mean, roughly? I mean, are they effective, I guess, is kind of the concept, and how many?
We could do some digging into it and get back to you on it, but I don't have that ability right now.
Okay. Mr. Co-Chairman? You're good now? Okay. Representative McCann, and then we'll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To any of you, a couple questions. Of these people that are being pulled over, non-English speaking, one, do they have their license? And then the other question is a little bit off the topic of the bill, but how are they getting their license? Are they able to gain the testing? Maybe we need to change our testing to make sure this doesn't happen. That's it.
Okay. Lieutenant?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take the second question. In Wyoming, we only issue the test in English, and we don't allow an interpreter. So in Wyoming, to get a CDL, you have to be proficient in English. So if they do have a CDL from another state, I can't answer to that.
Okay.
Well, just to follow up on that question. So are
Actually, before you, I'm going to come over here to Representative Larson. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yes, sir. So to any of you, so you've got 497 stops. Do you then have a feel if that's pulling those out of service or causing any concerning problems to the owner of the cargo or the carriers? Because and that's in reference to the stricken language where you had concerns partly in the length of time that might be out of service. Am I making sense here, Director Westby? So has this caused any problems with pulling that many out of service?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, not that I'm aware of. Some of the guys on the team. could-
Lieutenant.
Chairman Brown, yes, there are some that issues. I mean, the companies that are hiring these companies to deliver this cargo could have some delayed penalties for late delivery of products. But as far as us on the concerns is, we want to make sure that we want to do everything that we can to make sure perishable content is not sitting on the side of the roads. So that's our number one thing. Did I answer your question?
You did. I was just wanting to see if we had learned anything that's causing us angst is my biggest concern.
Okay.
And you've answered that. Thank
We're
you.
going to go to Representative Nicholas.
That's all right.
Okay. Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess a broad question is if folks are employing people that shouldn't be driving these trucks, knowingly let them go down the road without a proficiency in English, why is that the onus upon us? I mean, they put perishable foods inside of said vehicle that they have a driver that shouldn't be driving. Why is the liability on the state, on Highway Patrol in this case, to take care of goods that, are perishable? But you didn't tell those folks to drive that truck. You just found them out that they're not proficient in English and violate the law. So I guess I'd like to know why we have any responsibility to deal with that. I mean, as good people, right, you try to do the best you can. But in a situation where someone's chosen to do this, they've put people behind the wheel that should not be back there. And you find them out, we don't catch them all. But I guess I'm a little confused on why we're that concerned about people doing illegal actions and then having to deal with it later. So could you help me out with, I guess, the broader question of, why is it an issue?
Anybody want to answer why we keep commerce moving?
That's not the question.
I guess, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Well, legally, we have no onus to do it. Frankly, these companies are breaking the law. And I've seen them where they had a driver taken out of service and then they send another driver and that driver wasn't any better. Couldn't speak English either. So it's up to them. It's up to the company. I think what we want to do, though, especially if there's perishable food, we want to do whatever we can to get that. Ultimately, it's the client who hires the transportation service, that's going to be harmed by this. But it's the transportation service that takes the ultimate responsibility. Certainly not the Highway Patrol or the state of Wyoming. We have to certainly abide by, 391, the federal law. And then certainly, if we put this in place, by our own state additions. But I certainly like the amendments that the department is bringing forward, especially paragraph F. I mean, what we're doing with paragraph F is making them essentially babysitters. To sit on the side of the road and babysit a load, it's not our responsibility to do that, right? So I'm glad to see that you want to strike paragraph F, because I think the whole intent of this law is to take that person out of service and charge them with a criminal violation. So kudos for bringing these amendments. Thank you.
Senator Barlow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to go back a little bit further, probably not get into the details, except for one small detail. So what we're really doing with this is actually starting to enforce the CFR around the persons who are qualified to drive. That's my understanding is. You have to, I'm looking at the CFR, you have to actually be proficient in English to qualify for a commercial driver's license. That is the current law. So what's occurred is, we've had states issuing licenses to people who are not proficient. That's the only way you can come out. If it's Wyoming's not doing it, then some other states are doing it, period. You don't have to respond. There's people in the back nodding their heads. But my question is, when I look at page 2, and this is your proposed language, in accordance with guidance given by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration in CFR. To me, that's a disconnect. Code of Federal Regulations is the Code of Federal Regulations. So I am unclear what the guidance means, what that is, if there's an interpretation or if there's some kind of memos that are coming out. That's what I guess I'm just curious about. Because to me, that's talking about giving some latitude, some discretion to the Federal Motor Carrier Administration, where I think the law, at least when I'm looking at it, and I got it pulled up, is black and white. You have to demonstrate proficiency. So I'm not suggesting this might not be the right language, but I just want to understand what guidance means in the context of a CFR. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director?
Mr. Chairman, I'll answer part of that, and I'll let the team talk about the specific language in our draft amendment. We are enforcing the law. What this bill is doing is to ensure that there's a criminal penalty fine with it. Up until now, we put them out of service, and that's it. Per law, we can do that. What this bill is going to do is allow us to penalize the driver $1,000, and then if you do it again, another 1,000, plus you've got potential jail time. And so I just wanted to make sure that you were clear that we are enforcing the CFR law of English proficiency with the 497 since June. Not quite 6 months, and we've already got 500 of them off the road. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that we are enforcing that law, ensuring that we get those people off the roads.
Follow-up?
A follow-up then, so pulling them out of service is one thing. Can you actually take away the license? Seems like someone gets pulled over for other infractions, you actually take their driver's licenses, not just take them out of service, but take their privilege to drive away as well. Is that being done as well? Not just out of service, to be clear. Out of service is, they can't drive that vehicle. But to the individual that had two in a period of time, they probably shouldn't have had a CDL to begin with. They shouldn't have had a CDL to begin with, and they shouldn't have had it the second time to be on the road the second time. Is that accurate? Or is that how it should be done? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree, but I'll let somebody that can talk about licenses, and Misty's not here. Taylor may be able to help out with that on the being able to take away or remove a CDL. I'll let Taylor talk about that. But before we get to that, Mr. Chairman, Senator, do you guys want to talk about the language on the CFR guidance?
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please, Captain.
Senator Barlow, that's a great question. The amendment in there that is proposed. So the way again, this is being copied from the Oklahoma. Oklahoma did not provide a testing measure for across the board. And again, this is a draft for all peace officers in the state of Wyoming to be able to enforce this violation. So the best option that we came up with, because again, this can be subjective if you're delivering this test to someone and there's no set document to run that test off of. And in our discussion, we were trying to come up with a sufficient test that we could put into the statute that all peace officers within the state of Wyoming could reference. And currently, what we reference in the Wyoming Highway Patrol with our CVSA certified inspectors that can currently enforce this violation off of the CFR. I believe it was when this got changed back in June. The FMCSA provided two separate testing documents. One was for the interview with set interview questions, and the second portion was a road sign test. And that is what we are using in guidance from FMCSA.
for all of our inspectors, and they are required to use that each time they are testing English language proficiency for any commercial motor vehicle operator. So that was the best option that we could come up with, that the statute incorporate that test so that there is a standard for all peace officers within the state of Wyoming to follow to eliminate potential subjectivity by the person administrating the test.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, hold on just a second. We've got follow-up on this from the question. Mr. Rossetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Barlow, Taylor Rossetti, Deputy Director for WYDOT. The question as to whether or not the license can just automatically be pulled is one of the areas of concern that we've got on that first offense. The first offense as described in here is not one that is universally recognized across jurisdictions. However, because you're placing that person out of service in the state of Wyoming, if they get caught on that second one, we do believe then that would trigger an actual commercial violation, which would lead to a suspension or withdrawal underneath the federal regulations. So I think right now, this is just an area where Oklahoma got a little bit ahead of the federal guidance and where we're going as well. However, we do believe the way that this is drafted would be something that, as these guys are speaking to, could be enforced. And we would work with our partners on the licensing side to make sure this is handled correctly.
Okay, let's go ahead and start down here with Representative Larson.
So I think you provided, Mr. Chairman, I think you guys provided us some documentation that indicated that and the reason we need to use guidance is because it isn't law. They've accepted whatever board that is that came up with the proficiency options. That was their recommendation, which then has been adopted by the feds to say, okay, we'll accept this, but it's not necessarily law, but it is guidance. And we could make it law, I guess, but we're just saying that it's not a law passed by Congress, not a law passed by rule. It was just that they adopted the recommendations from that. You guys use the acronym, whatever board that is. Am I understanding that right?
I think I'm going to ask the same question in a little bit different way. So the way I'm reading the words that you guys have used is in accordance with guidance given by the FMCSA in the CFR. The guidance is what you guys utilize to give the testing. It's kind of like an appendix, if you will. You guys are enforcing CFR, which is the law, but you're using the guidance that they have provided you to do that. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Let's start over here. We've got Representative Posey, and then I'm going to come to co-chairman.
So a couple different questions.
I said Posey. Posey,
I
please.
thought you said started on Representative Nichols. I thought you said.
No, I did not, sir.
Hear him.
Representative Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question that kind of directly relates to my district. And, the BIA is federal officers. Is there an agreement or to I guess, enforce something like this? We have Bourbon and Affairs patrolling 789 and 287, for example, doing highway stuff. I understand that through Supreme Court cases that tribes do not have jurisdiction over non-tribal citizens. So how does that work if say a Bourbon and Affairs pulled over somebody that was not proficient in the English language? I know if they pulled over somebody that was caught under a DUI, the sheriff would have to come out and assume that, the person that would be arrested. How would that work in terms of this law going into effect? How that would affect the Wind River Reservation with federal officers?
Whoever wants to answer that, take that over. It looks like the captain's reaching for the mic, so.
Yeah, Chairman. Representative Posey, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that question. Currently, I know up in that district, with our officers, if there's a incident similar to that would happen, I know they can request one of our troopers to respond to assist with that. But I really don't have a direct response or answer for your question at this time.
Okay. Mr. Co-Chairman?
Yeah, I actually was just in response to Representative Larson's question on the guidance. There on page 9 on line 2. I think the guidance that you had mentioned, I just want a clarification. The guidance is only for the testing portion of it. But I really think this paragraph, it's talking about proficiency in the English language means an operator of a commercial vehicle can demonstrate proficiency of the English language in accordance with, and I think guidance should be stricken, just in accordance with 95 CFR, da-da-da-da.
Mr. Co-Chair.
I think that's more correct.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I think if we probably turn it over to Lise, but typically we would say, as defined by 49 CFR, section 391.11B2, and then once that's in statute in that fashion, then the department would have, through their rules and regulations, would adopt the test for implementing under that language.
Agreed. We'll get to the nuts and the bolts of the actual language when we go to work the bill, but I don't disagree with you guys. So we're going to go to Representative Geringer and then back again to Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my understanding of the CFR is it's a compilation of rules and regs that are issued by the federal agencies, right? And so what happens if, with a change of administration, those federal regs are maybe watered down a little bit? And so that's my concern with striking entirely the definition that we have in there of all the different parameters that we would like to see met in determining proficiency of the English language. So can we, I guess, if that language is watered down, can we have something more strict that is defined in our statute to be able to enforce that?
So, Mr. Co-Chair, I can answer that question.
Okay, then we'll let you answer.
Because I've got the regulation pulled up, and the prior language we had in here came from the CFRs. And at this point, I think it's identical, at least as I was just trying to speed reading it. But we have that problem on a regular basis. But I can only say that the CFRs continue to grow, they don't get smaller. So I don't think you got to worry about making it weaker. You have to worry about the additions that come into it that we may not like. But that's part of the problem with adopting CFRs.
Yep, exactly. Yes, Mr. Co-Chairman?
Thank you. And to Mr. Chairman, and to my concern with that is what happens, if we do something different outside of the CFRs in addition, then we have truck drivers coming across, they're in compliance with federal law, and all of a sudden they hit the state, and now they're not in compliance with Wyoming law. And so that becomes really problematic. I mean, every truck driver has got to know what the law is in every state pertaining to this. Yeah, maybe they should. I mean, we do that probably in other areas, but I think that it'd be easier for the department to manage and be able to cite these people without us putting additional burden on top of what the CFR requires, because I don't really think that there would be, as Representative Nicholas said, that these things are already in there. So it's a moot point to put them back in unless we want to change something really drastically.
Follow-up? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess I agree. I've looked at the CFR as well, and it is basically lock, stock, and barrel out of that. However, my point is, in the future, with an administration change that maybe would relax those, to have something that is defined in here gives us the ability to still enforce when maybe that does occur in the future.
Okay, so
Follow up?
Okay, I'm going to make sure that we come back here. We're not going to have back and forth at the dais. We have people here to answer our questions, and this is where we're going to be having these discussions with our witnesses. Does anybody want to have the discussion on the question here about whether or not we want to adopt what CFR says versus putting it into our state statute, and what the rationale was behind you guys striking that and adopting the CFR?
Chairman?
Please, Captain.
Representative Gagner, we did discuss that exact same question when going over this draft, and had the exact same concerns. And if my memory is tracking correctly, I think we talked about if that is the case and that were to happen, and the state of Wyoming as a whole was not pleased with potential changes from future federal administrations, the law would have to get amended.
Okay. We're starting to run close on time here for lunch, so what we'll do is we'll continue doing this, but what I'd like to do is finish up questions to our witnesses before we go to lunch, so we can come back and work the bill after lunch. Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the question I have is about enforcement with local law enforcement people. Have you worked with the Chiefs Sheriff Association to kind of make sure this is going to mesh? Because it goes beyond, you folks are already doing it, right? So we're talking about something we're trying to give our local law enforcement the ability to enforce. So is there a training they're gonna have to have? Does anyone know if they feel comfortable with this, this particular CFR and enforcement of it? You've showed us all the cards, but just how do we in a practical way, how do we let our local law enforcement people feel comfortable in enforcing these requirements? That's my question. Thank you.
Captain, have you guys had any discussions with chiefs of police?
Chairman, Senator Kolb, if those conversations have taken place, that's probably been at a higher level than myself, whether it with Colonel Cameron or another member of our agency executive staff with WASCOP leadership and representation. So my answer to your question to that currently is I don't know. The other parts of your question there, I am sure if this draft were to come into law, I'm sure our agency, specifically my section, Lieutenant McKay, Manager McAlpine, we would be receiving a lot of phone calls, and if training were to be requested, I'm sure Colonel Cameron would have no issues having us take the charge on that if other agencies wanted that training.
I will also say, to that end, we have had this bill before us for 2 full-time meetings, and we have had the opportunity for WASCOP to come testify before us, and we have not seen or heard from them, so that's also onus is on them. I have Representative Wiley and then Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking through this, a lot of these proposed amendments, it's becoming heavily centric around just the driver. We've had previous testimony of bad actors in these carriers that will just change a dot number and continue to run the same exact truck, same kind of loads, and still be, breaking the law. I understand and I appreciate the concern for interstate commerce here, but I mean, $200,000 load, $1,000 fine for that. I think if we don't have something there, these carriers are going to continue just to write it into the bottom line and work around the law. I do have concerns about that, and I understand where you're saying you don't have the facilities and stuff, but I mean, we tow and put vehicles in tow yards all the time. Do we have an answer to how to combat that concern that I have there?
Captain?
Chairman. Representative Wiley, that's a great question to ask. And again, when our committee met and discussed this draft and going over that section, again, we really don't want to have the staff or people present. I mean, this would you'd have to almost create a whole nother section, whether a different department within the state to manage this, because again, it would not just be WYDOT, Wyoming Highway Patrol, and again, just the other logistical reasons that we already presented are the biggest concerns in managing the back end civil penalties on top of the draft, starting there in section F.
Mr. Co-Chair, can I follow up on that?
Okay, let's go ahead and do follow-up, and then I'm going to come back to co-chairman.
Because I'm looking at your proposed draft, and you strike paragraph E, which is the penalty to the carrier. And your rationalization is the civil penalty versus criminal penalty. So as I understand it, a driver is an agent of the carrier. And so you can issue 2 citations at the same time. You can issue one to the driver, and you can then issue one to the carrier that you deliver to the carrier, the agent, which is the driver, that then can impose a criminal penalty for the fact that that truck is there, not just the driver is there. And so, did you guys talk about that?
Captain?
We did have discussions about that, and I think, and Taylor might be able to talk about this a little bit more as well, but I think we were just trying in section E, if E were to stay in, that would have to be a after-action process and not necessarily at time of inspection or roadside is where our discussion went on that part within subsection E. But again, the mechanism to make that happen, I don't think exists at this time. So that would be something completely new and different that would have to be developed to enforce that civil. The scenario that you placed with issuing the criminal penalty to the driver for the violation and then the secondary citation for the civil penalty.
It's not, no, I'm saying that make it a criminal, not a civil.
That, I don't know how that would work. That's well beyond my knowledge of law on how that would work on that end.
Mr. Co-Chairman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This kind of same issue that we faced when we were looking at the penalties for the, the blowover law that we passed. If you recall, we were trying to go after the companies, and the companies typically, penalize them $1,000, and for them, it's no big deal. They pay the $1,000, put another driver in there and go on. And so we actually came down on the side of, if you put the penalty on the driver, with a second offense being the loss of a CDL, they're gonna think twice about getting back into that cab and not being able to comply with the law. So I think it's probably more effective. It'd be nice to have both, because it'd be nice to go after the company. And if we can make that a criminal law, criminal penalty, that'd be great. Again, I don't think we've ever looked at that, and I don't know I don't know that you could actually give the citation initially. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, I don't know. You probably know more as an attorney than I do. But certainly we don't want a civil penalty.
Chairman?
Yes.
Also too, in regards to that, and Manager McAlpine and Lieutenant McKay definitely have more experience in this realm than I do, but if that second citation were to get issued to the driver as the agent of the company, typically what the company will immediately do is just fire that driver, and then that citation is still stuck onto that driver as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Larson?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Posey had a question on jurisdiction on the reservation. I think I could answer if you'd allow me. It's not a question.
Please.
So Representative Posey, just in some of the work that we had done previously prior to your election on tribal relations, all of the offenses on state highways going through the reservation are enforced by state authorized peace officers, so that'd be highway patrol or sheriffs, as you noted. However, BIA police or tribal law enforcement can pull over and detain that person until such time as highway patrol or county can get there. That was questioned, and you'll recall they had the case on the Crow Reservation where tribal law enforcement pulled the guy over and found that he had all the drugs that went to Supreme Court, and they says indeed he could detain him. It wasn't an illegal detainment. He could detain him until the time that the state law enforcement came by. And I would just assume that this would be the same, that in whatever action that they pulled this individual over in a truck and they had a proficiency problem, that they couldn't issue citation, but they could detain him until such time that Highway Patrol or Sheriff's Department could, is I think how that would work, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, any further questions for our witnesses before we break for lunch? Well, we'll go to public comment after lunch. So I just want to make sure we have any witnesses here, any questions that we have. Okay, seeing none. With that, what we will do is we're going to break for lunch here. We'll come back at, we'll call it 1:30. Is that good enough for everybody, or do we want to do 2?
No.
I think 1:30 is good enough.
On this agenda, we only have.
Yep, so we'll just do an hour and a half. We will come back, and when we come back, we will take public comment on this bill, and then we will work the bill. With that, we are in recess until 1:30.
Kind of hard to work a bill when you just provided with a